Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night here to Sports Crib. As usual, a lot of things going on. I'm hoping we can get Reggie and Demetrius on tonight, but then I do see Bill here and Dave. Bill, how are you doing this evening?
So far, so good. And in one of the thrilling upsets of the college football season, the Black Knights of the Hudson humbled the Flyboys from what do you call it? Air Force Academy, which is a big time upset. Air Force was undefeated until just a couple weeks ago, and this has not been a great season for Army. But go Army! And if Army, of course, beats Navy, they will have the Commander-in-Chief's trophy in its rightful place.
Yes.
Are they still playing at Thayer Stadium at West Point?
No, it's Michie.
Or Michie Stadium, right on the river. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a cool experience if you ever get a chance to watch a game there.
It is a very cool experience. I haven't been there since I was in high school when I was considering becoming a Black Knight, but didn't work out.
So that also will take me into the significance of this weekend for veterans. Make sure that you get out and support some of the veterans parades, some of the different events that will be going on this weekend. If you're homeless or if you need a meal, there are various restaurants. I know Denny's, IHOP, Chili's, just to name a few, that offer free meals to veterans on Veterans Day. It's either usually a breakfast or a dinner. You can check and see, but there are a lot of places you can go and just present your ID and get a free meal.
Yep.
Dave, how's the weather there in Pittsburgh? No, you're in Maryland. I keep thinking that you live in Pittsburgh.
Right outside of Disney World. So no, everything's going well. I have a little Sue's corner, but she had to head out early this morning, so she jotted something down for me. So later on, she can do that. But she'll be back in a few days.
Oh, okay. Well, is she going to take care of her mother, or was this just a pleasure event?
Pleasure event. So I'm holding down the fort.
Oh, okay. All right. So no Steelers game for you this weekend, huh?
No, I'm going up to the Steelers game, and I'm taking my middle son, Max, with me. He's 30, but he's going to be visiting with my mother on Saturday and Sunday, and then I'll be attending the game against Green Bay on Sunday.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, when you get our age, Dave, and you see I'm taking, like one of your family members somewhere, and like, in your case, you're saying, your middle son is 30, and when I talk about my little brother is 60, so it's like, it's like, wow, like how the years have just like flown by,
The pecking order stays the same no matter how
I know.
There you go.
My oldest son is turning 42 this year. It's like, Jesus Christ. Anyway, as you can see, I was expecting some of the baseball guys here tonight, but we have Bill that is our jack of all sports here, and so we'll talk a little bit about these two baseball topics here. I know it's the off season, but just looking around the sports world, I thought these were a couple of interesting things. So I'm going to come to you, Dave. Joey Votto. All of us know, old enough to remember Joey Votto and his years with the Reds and things that he's done. Home run hitter, good fielder. Uh, I'm sure Bill can tell us how many Golden Glove awards he has, how many different style cleats, and so forth. But the Reds did decline his $20 million option. Bill, is Joey a Hall of Fame or is he a member of your Hall of Very Good?
Yeah, I mean, so if you want to compare him to someone who's at least come close, he's close to, guys like Ish, uh, guys like Kiner. But the thing that sort of I think prevents him, I should say it prevents him. I should say it prevents him. He may still make it, but probably on the Veterans Committee vote. The magic numbers, right? The magic numbers. If you get to 500, right, that was a magic number. 350 is a solid number, but in order for 350 home runs to get you in, you also have to be exceptional at something else. And he did get over 2,000 hits, but just barely. I mean, 2,135 now, and he is 40. So it's unlikely he'll play much more if he plays more. His average is solid but unspectacular. So he doesn't have any magic number that says, "Oh wow, that guy! My God, look at him." I mean, they're all really good numbers. Now, what I should mention is that advanced metrics are his friend. We saw what happened with Scott Rowland. If Scott Rowland is a player that retires in the 1960s, we think of him like we would have thought of as a guy like, Ken Boyer, right? Really, really good, but not so good that you have to put him in. But advanced metrics really help Scott Rowland. So maybe the advanced metrics, things like OPS and things like that, will help him out. But when you think about other guys with similar careers, most of them aren't in. There's guys who even have slightly superior careers who aren't in. And I mean, he and Gary Sheffield, right? I mean, obviously there's, I guess, this other stuff with but Sheffield's got him in almost every category. So Sheffield has more stolen bases. Sheffield has more home runs. Sheffield has a bit higher batting average. Sheffield has more doubles, more triples, a higher OPS. I mean, like there's almost more RBI. Pick a number, except strikeouts. Votto hasn't been strikeouts, but almost every other number you can throw out there, Sheffield's superior, and he hasn't come close. Now, obviously, there's some PED stuff, but Chef was a guy that if you saw him, he never needed PEDs. Like Chef was good enough pre-PEDs. I think it was like peer pressure or whatever that got him to take it. But he was a monster long before he ever touched any of that stuff. So when I think about comparable players who haven't gotten in, there's a decent number of them. Votto is more well-liked than some of those guys, and that does matter. Whether it should matter or not, we can have a good discussion about. But the fact that you can't find, two people to say a bad word about Joseph Daniel Votto, of course, a Canadian. You can't find two people on the planet probably have something negative to say about him. So that may help him. But his career, and he hasn't retired yet. We're looking back on this Toronto native as if it was all over for him. He could continue to play, but he would have to take obviously a massive cut in salary because nobody's going to sign a 40-year-old player or older to a huge contract. One other player I'll throw out there, somewhat similar, who hasn't come close to being inducted, and I think it's maybe a slightly superior player, or maybe two guys, right? El Gato Grande, right? The big cat, who was a slightly better fielder, slightly more strikeouts, despite the fact he was a big man. Similar in most of the other offensive stats. And then who's the other one? Just retired recently. Oh my God, I can see him in my mind. Almost like sitting down in a chair, batting stance, very upright bat. Not Venezuelan. Was he Venezuelan? No, he was. I think he was Dominican. Oh, he just retired a couple years ago. 292 lifetime batting average, about the same number of home runs. Was he another Roberto? Oh my God, I can see him in my mind. Played for the Dodgers. Played for about 4 different teams. Oh, it's killing me.
While you're thinking about it, I think the one thing, and maybe you can expand on this, Bill, but it seems like the Baseball Hall of Fame is a little more selective.
Oh,
And,
not a
and I
little more. It's way more.
and so
It's
that is probably going to be the challenge for him is just the selectivity of the Baseball Hall of Fame. But I defer to you. You know a lot more about it to me. That's just my impression.
yeah. If he's the equivalent as a basketball player, oh, he gets in fairly quickly. I mean, no offense to Ben Wallace, but Ben Wallace is in the Hall of Fame, and I mean, and he's a good player, but I mean, what? But we're talking about a guy with a 644 WAR, which is really good. And he is a 6-time All-Star. He has won a Gold Glove. He has won an MVP. Those things help him. The 294 batting average is solid. It's not woo, but it's solid. Obviously, sort of 300 is a magic number. 356 home runs is a good number, but it's not a magic number. And his career OPS right now is 920. So that's and like I said, that may be the thing that sort of pushes him is people being more tied into advanced metrics, having a better understanding of what that really means historically. Because, I mean, he's had a couple of absolute ridiculous monster seasons. He had one season we had a 600 slugging percentage. Like, that's a short list of guys you can find who've ever had a 600 slugging percentage. So, but like I said, the main issue is that Todd Helton's not in. And Todd Helton, to me, had a slightly superior career. We'll see what happens with a guy like Paul Goldschmidt. Very similar players. Freddie Freeman, of course, is still playing. Similar guys. Edgar Martinez finally made it in. Lance Berkman hasn't really sniffed it. Very similar player. Galarraga was a guy that was very, very similar. And we'll see what happens to guys like that. Like these guys haven't. Moises Alou, I think, was maybe not quite as good, slightly inferior. But he's in that mix with guys that are close-ish, right? Galarraga has 2 silver sluggers, which Votto doesn't. Has won a batting title, which Votto never did. They both have won a Gold Glove, 2 for Galarraga, 1 for Votto, and 5-time All-Star for Galarraga, 6 times for Votto. WAR much higher for Votto. That's where WAR pulls away. And Galarraga should have played maybe one more year. He's at 399 home runs. So 400 is not quite 500, but it's a magic-ish number. For a man his size, the 128 career home runs, which isn't exactly mind-boggling. But when you looked at Galarraga, it's, that's a guy that probably was darn near 260 at the end of his career. So, not too shabby. Only 80 for Votto, who is, a trim 222 by comparison. He had good running instincts despite being a massive, massive man. He hasn't been OPS. That's where Galarraga is inferior to Votto's OPS. Votto's 920 is, like I said, now that people care about stuff like OPS, if he gets in, it's that 920 OPS that probably does it for him.
And right now, Mr. Scott is like the guy with the he's the old man with the Black Sox right now. There you go with them damn analytics. But
Well, I mean, in baseball, they embraced analytics 100 years ago. So he lost that fight in baseball.
So, Dave, we have Shohei Ohtani, and World Series MVP Corey Seager, and the Rangers second baseman Marcus Semien. They're the top 3 right now for the AL MVP race. Who's your choice there?
I don't have a dog in the fight. For me, the Pirates, whenever they went out, I did follow the Rangers a little bit, but I just don't have a dog in the fight.
But what about the National League, where you got Acuna Jr. and then you got the 2 Dodgers, and as Bill had just said just a minute ago, first baseman Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts.
Yeah, I
You
guess
like him?
maybe Acuna is who I would go with, but um, I'm just not too sure. I just didn't follow it closely enough to be to give an authoritative selection there.
Well, I'm sure if Reggie were here, Acuna would definitely be his favorite. Uh, the Dodgers between Mookie and Freddie. Although I am a Mookie fan, I kind of give the edge this time to Freddie, but that's just my opinion. So, and as far as the American League, I mean, it screams Otani.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's common sense. But Corey Seager with the World Series MVP. As Bill said. But I think in this case, even the analytics would favor Otani. But Bill,
everything favors Acuna and Otani. So Akani had a season for the ages, right? Was a very good to dominant starter as a pitcher. In the 135 games he was able to play as a position player, he managed in only 497 at bats to generate 151 hits, 26 doubles, 8 triples, 44 home runs, 95 RBIs. Struck out 143 times, which isn't awesome, but they don't care about that as much as they used to. 20 stolen bases, 304 batting average, 412 on base percentage, a 654. 600 is really high. 654 is nuts as a slugging percentage. It's historic. A 654 slugging percentage is historic. You're on a short list of guys like Jimmy Double X Fox, Babe Ruth, the splendid splinter Ted Williams in his prime, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays. I mean, it's a handful of guys that have been over 650. A handful in the history of baseball. His number, don't overthink it, people. Give it to the guy who's had one of the all-time seasons in the history of the game. And then on top of that, just for fun, it was a top 5 or 6 starting pitcher. Like it's insanity. Seager had a really good season, and in a normal year, he would have had a good shot at it. But this isn't a normal year, so thank you for playing. And then Ronald Acuna, stayed healthy. First of all, played in 159 games, so he has. I think he might have been one of the leaders in bats this year. He had over 640 at bats, so he stayed healthy. He had 217 hits, which I think leads the entire major leagues. 35 doubles, 4. I'm a little surprised he didn't have more than 4 triples because as fast as he is. 41 home runs, 106 RBIs. Only struck out 84 times. Nowadays, 84 is a good number. 73 stolen bases. It's been so long since I've seen a stolen base leader with a 7 being the first number. I hope that this is sort of here to stay because the stolen base almost died out for a while there. That's my one sort of kick against like the Moneyball mentality is those guys only looked at the downside of stolen bases. Oh, you get thrown out and it doesn't make that much a difference between getting to second, getting to third, blah, blah, blah. But what they were ignoring was the disruptive power of base stealing. But that's for another rant, another time. Was only caught 14 times also. So a lot of steals was not getting caught that much. 337 average, which is beautiful. I mean, like it really was like a season from another era, right? A guy who's number 2 in the majors in batting average amongst qualifying players, second only to Luis Arraez from this is called the Miami Marlins. These are called the Florida Marlins. I still have to try to remind myself that the Miami Marlins now. But a 416 on base percentage was absolutely amazing. 536 slugging is solid, but once again, an OPS of over 1,000. Anytime you're over 1,000 in OPS, that means you had one heck of a season. He's at 1,012. Not the 1,066 for Ohtani, but he also fields his position well. And like I said, he's the top in stolen bases in the majors. Don't overthink it. That's the best player in the National League. That's the best player in the American League. Give them the award.
Like I said, you can kind of make an argument, but the numbers speak for themselves. At least they used to. So we'll see when these are announced. Well, Dave, before we get off into our college football, let's have Sue's Corner.
All right. So she was heading out the door, but she wanted to fulfill her duty, and so what she provided us, she said, this is a feel good stories of the week.
Yeah.
And but it was one event, I believe. So from the boys' national championship, Charlie Woods, who closed in 3 under 68 to finish tied for 17th in the 14 to 15 division with his 15-time major winning dad, Tiger Woods, caddying all 3 rounds. Charlie ended up at 2 over for the event, 13 shots back. And Tiger walked and carried his son's bag the whole way. The winner was Misha Gulad. Gulad's victory was his 2nd straight at this event, as the 16-year-old Ukrainian won the 14 to 15 division last year. Gulad, who has lived in Florida since the war broke out in his native country, is happy to be here in the USA. So I just wanted, and the other thing is, when Sue and I, when she said that she wrote this and she was going out, the thing that we exchanged was, Tiger didn't do this for publicity. He was just there supporting his son and wasn't making any, he was just carrying his son's bags, which I thought was pretty cool. So that's Sue's Corner for this week.
Yeah, to me, the newsworthy thing is that Tiger was able to do it. I mean, he's had some back and knee problems that were fairly significant the last few years. So to me, that's the real sort of the big news, is that he was able to do it without apparently any physical distress.
Yeah, that's I think that was the greatest news. The fact, like you said, Bill, that he was able to walk, carry his son's bag, now, swinging the club at the same time, might be a different story, but we've had in spite of some of the other adventures of Tiger Woods, I almost want to say it's like the sins of the father, the way he supports his son and the way his father supported him. So it's kind of a mirror, but like you say, that's one of those stories for a much different day. But very good feel-good story, Dave. Had to thank Sue, and as usual, it's always good to hear from Sue. So thank you, Sue, and we hope you get back soon. And so let's get into just a little college football here. And I didn't want to get too deep into a lot of things, because we'll see what happens when the actual teams start getting ranked for the playoffs, which they are now, basically kind of cutting things down a little bit. So with 2 games left in the regular season, USC coach Lincoln Riley fires his defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch. According to Riley, we simply weren't making the progress I think we were all expected to make, Riley said. It felt like it was in the best interest of the program. Dave, what are your thoughts? Lincoln Riley firing his defensive coordinator with just 2 games left in the season.
Well, I think that USC had higher expectations this year, with Caleb there, and the defense has given up over 40 points in 4 games. And I think one of their victories was 50-49. So uh, I tend to see here is one is he's sending out a message, and there's multiple messages that he has to send out. One is to try to salvage what's left of this season. They have a couple more games, and then it's like, okay, well, where are they going to end up in terms of the bowl games? But then there's a recruiting message, because right now teams are already trying to get young high school players signed, and he needs to finish strong. I think what the intent of the season is, and also to take a little bit. There's been a little bit of bad publicity, and I felt kind of bad for it after the one game when Caleb jumped up with his parents and was sobbing after the one loss.
Yeah, to
And it's
Washington.
like, hey, he was just emoting, and any sport is a very it's not a cold-blooded sport. You have a lot of emotions, and you're either suppressing them, or some people are very emotive during the games. But I don't think that you should come down on a player, because he's emoting. And I think the other thing and I don't think that this was the purpose of it, but what it does do is it's kind of putting the focus back on the game. Hey guys, we got a season to finish. We want to finish strong, and see where this takes us into the next year.
Bill, before the season, going back, about a month ago or so, we were talking on the Sports Crib about, Lincoln Riley and expectations, Caleb Williams, solid Heisman Trophy, talks of a national championship. Lincoln Riley is coming back to USC. He's the Messiah. He's the man to bring us the national title back to Southern California. Bill, I mean, is Alex a scapegoat for Lincoln Riley's shortcomings?
Yes, but also he did a very poor job. So both things can be true. First of all, he shouldn't have just brought Alex Grinch with him. What he should have done, or at least should have considered doing, is seeing more than one person. And hey, Alex Grinch certainly could have been invited to interview for the position. But when you don't have, we stress competition so much, especially in football, right? Compete, win your spot, all that kind of stuff. And Alex Grinch, I watched a fair amount of Oklahoma. It wasn't like they were just throttling people on defense when they were at Oklahoma. So it was a little perplexing to me that he would just simply bring him with him and plug him in and just assume that things would be hunky-dory. The part where I believe that it's true that he's being scapegoated is that Lincoln Riley has, throughout his head coaching career, put way more focus in recruiting on offense than defense. That's not opinion, that's fact. If you look at the number of 4 and 5 stars they've signed, there is a significant, I think it's something like 61 or almost 61% bias in terms of the top, the people who are in the top 300 are on the offensive side of the ball as opposed to the defensive side of the ball. Look at how many defensive linemen at Oklahoma are now killing it, or at least doing very well in the NFL. And look at how many defensive linemen. Perrion Winfrey's doing okay, and there's a handful of others. But, Creed Humphrey, there's a bunch of offensive linemen. You have to think hard to name some of them. You have to really kind of search your mind for, in the last few years, defensive linemen from Oklahoma that have really excelled in the NFL. So it shows you a weakness that is not simply, personal to Alex Grinch, but systemic in the way that they build teams. And they're now about to go to the Big Ten, where if you don't play defense, it's not the Big 12, it's not the Pac-12. They won't just be going 10-2, 9-3. They'll be getting, disappointed in games they lose to teams that are inferior to them in talent. When they lose to the Iowas and they lose to the Minnesotas of the world, and they're trying to figure out why, you're playing outdoor games, November the 19th or whatever. I mean, defense travels in a way that offense doesn't always. So I would advise him to take some time in making this next hire to look at somebody who's really established, has a really strong track record. And I'll just throw this out there. Rocky Long is available and still wants to coach. Now, he's 70 whatever years old, but the guy coaches his behind off. And defenses get better where he goes. I'm not suggesting really Rocky Long, but you could do worse. But more importantly, there are some terrific young, if you want to go young defensive coordinators out there who are hungry to show you what they can do and have a demonstrated record of success in improving defenses where they've gone consistently, which is something that Alex Grinch cannot claim.
Don't knock those 70-year-old guys.
I'm not knocking him. I'm a big Rocky Long fan.
Disagree is a sign of knowledge. But anyway, So like you said, Bill. When you look at the way that he is recruited, it's no wonder that they're very good on the offensive side of the ball. But you also have to recruit because you have to be able to stop the other guys. But hey, moving along here. Dave, losses send Oklahoma and Notre Dame plummeting in the top 25. I think Oklahoma is now 17 and Notre Dame is something like 22. Bill, Dave, do you think now they're closer to their proper perspectives instead of both of them being ranked in the top 10 for most of the season?
Well, first of all, there's 11 teams that either are undefeated, 5 teams are undefeated, and there's another 6 teams that one loss. So they're not a top. It's hard to put them in the top 10. And as soon as you have multiple losses like that, and you have that many teams with only one loss, it kind of makes it difficult. So then where they stack up, between 12 and 25. Well, I guess part of that would depend on the strength of their schedule, and they've had some pretty good games against some strong competition. But to me, it doesn't matter. You're going to end up, as long as you're somewhere between 12 and 20. Or even in the top 25 with 2 losses. Okay, now let's see where they go from here. They got 2 or 3 more games, and if they continue to win and if they beat quality opponents, then they should start climbing back up. So I don't have a problem at all where they're ranked. And then some of the different polls, because you have the AP poll, you have the playoff poll, you have the coaches poll. They may vary their rankings by a couple spots. So I think they didn't drop out of the top 25. So I'm good with it.
I usually use the coaches poll when I use these numbers here. But Bill, what are your thoughts? Oklahoma, despite the fact that Notre Dame did get beat by Ohio State and a few others here. What are they at? 3 losses now, Bill?
Yeah. Because they lost to Duke also, and they their best win is probably the USC win, but which may not look quite as bright and shiny as it once did. because Notre Dame is not in a conference and they don't really have anybody sort of attention grabbing left on the schedule, they could get maybe slightly higher than they are now, but not much higher. Oklahoma has the better chance to improve their standing. They could still win their conference. And so if they get into and win the Pac-12 championship game, which is not impossible still, then they're going to move up. Maybe not into the top 10, but they'll move up close to the top 10. And some of the teams that are above them will pick up losses, either in the regular season or in their championship games. So Notre Dame is both helped and hurt by not being in a conference. It means you can't lose in a championship game, but it also means that you don't have a conference title to play for and a quality win that would result from it. So once they've gotten through with, sort of the sexier, whatever term we use, matchups on their schedule, it's hard for them to improve their standing after that. So, as they sort of, play out the string, finish the schedule. I mean, Wake Forest isn't a bad team. Stanford this year is. So, that there's not much to be gained. Wake Forest is solid but unspectacular. And like I said, Stanford is, you can see that they're at least turning it around a little bit. I mean, they did knock off Colorado. That's their best win of the season. They're starting to sort of pull it together, but there's no one, the loss to a wounded Clemson, which I kind of sort of saw coming, because Clemson's still loaded with talent. They just weren't playing well. And desperation, whatever term we're going to use, they came out and showed you, who they really could have been this whole season. So Notre Dame is probably out of chances to move much higher than where they are, while Oklahoma still has some.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Bill. Notre Dame is probably right there in the bottom of the top 25. Like I said, I think in the coaches poll, which I use it there, 22. But it's being Notre Dame. Like you said, there's no national conference. There's no conference title for them to win. Unlike where with the basketball season, they can win a conference title in the ACC. But,
Yep.
We'll talk to Jeffrey a little bit more about that as the season progresses. Bill, I'm going to come to you first here because I'm sure you have a little bit more knowledge about themselves, what's going on, even though James Madison is much closer to Dave's neck of the woods. I think they play.
I've probably seen more JMU games than he has, though.
I'm sure. I'm sure you've seen more games than me and Dave combined.
I had Zippo that I've seen,
and I've been on their campus. Right, I've been on the campus before. Beautiful Central Virginia. Several of my friends, including some of my high school teammates, went there, and somewhat sadly, there's an award named for a teammate of mine who unfortunately died in a practice at James Madison years ago. So the Douglas R. West Award is named for my friend, the late Doug West from Green Run High School, who, while he was redshirting, was in an accident on the practice field there and died of a fractured skull. And so the top scout team player now wins an award named for my late friend. But yes, I'm very familiar with James Madison. I have several friends who went there and have been on the campus more than once. It's a terrific football program. They were good when they were D2. They were terrific when they were FCS, and they continue to be good now that they've made the move to FBS.
Yeah, like I said, I know they play Robert Morris on a pretty consistent basis.
Well, they're in the Fun Belt now, but they're not. They're a provisional member. There will be a full member next year.
So they wrote the NCAA a letter asking for them, since the undefeated Dukes, to be fully bowl eligible. They're one of the 2 undefeated teams in the group of 5 teams in college football. Bill, should there be bowl eligible, and give us a little history of why they're why this came about.
So in your transition year, you don't have a full complement of scholarships. They will not have 85 scholarship players until next year. Not that it seems to bother them at all, because they're beating everybody who lines up against them. But so they are doing it with probably about 72, 73, something like that, scholarship players. So it's supposed to be protecting your program and your record because you're not fully FBS loaded in terms of scholarships. But it's somewhat comical. So we know for a fact, we've seen it happen where they've made teams bowl eligible that normally wouldn't be. We saw during the COVID year where teams who had won 3 games or 4 games and lost 4 games or lost 5 or lost 6 in some cases, teams that were a game or 2 under 500 were being granted bowl eligibility. So waivers are possible. It seems silly. Like I said, this team may well end up going undefeated, and they can't obviously play for an FCS championship because they've left and they have too many players on scholarship to be an FCS program because the limit there is 65. They're sort of at a catch weight, right, to use a boxing term. And, unfortunately, they can't find a title fight. So I would like to see something done for them. If they can't, match them up in a FBS bowl game, maybe they should play the FCS champion or something, for all the marbles. I don't know. I hope that this is resolved in a way that makes some sense. The idea that their season would just end at 11 and maybe they should be given the UCF championship belt that they claimed when they went undefeated. But it just seems silly that a team that's essentially fighting at a disadvantage or playing at a disadvantage is just beating everybody, beating all comers.
Yeah, they're the Pottsville Maroons. But I tell you, it would be one thing if they were moving down a division. If they were moving down, I could see where they could say, well, hey, we want you to wait a season or 2 because you have an advantage because of these additional scholarships that you have. But they were moving up. They've moved up. And to me, it's reminiscent of Carlton Hasselrig, who was a Pittsburgh Steeler lineman and a 3-time NCAA Division I wrestling champion. But he was also a 3-time Division II wrestling champion because at the time, the NCAA would allow the winners of Division III and Division II to get a spot in Division I.
Right.
And he won it 3 years in a row in the 275 weight class. And what was their response? They no longer allowed the Division II or Division III champions to participate in the Division I championship. They were embarrassed. And so to me, I see this partially as embarrassment. They don't want to be embarrassed. They can get a bowl, technically. There's 41 bowls. And if there's out of the 41 bowls, if there's a team, if there's not 82 teams that are at least 6-6, then they'll give them a bowl. But there's probably going to be a lot of teams that are 6-6 or 7-5 that will get bowls instead of James Madison. And I believe that one of their rationales for this is they want to limit the number of teams that jump divisions. And so then they kind of put this penalty. They do it for basketball too, I believe.
Right.
And so they put this penalty in there to discourage the movement of programs rather than taking some responsibility as the NCAA. And if you don't want to have that many programs, put a limit on it and then tell all of the teams that, hey, we're going to limit you to only 2 or 3 teams that can move per year. And then you're going to have to put in an application and then we'll approve. But if they're going up a division and they're undefeated, well, then they should be rewarded, not punished. And so I find this whole thing ludicrous. And for me, it's reminiscent of Carlton Hasselrig, which leaves when I wrestled in college, I had a guy, Bill DePauli I went to California, PA. He was an All-American in NCAA Division I, and he came from Little Cal U, but he was that good. And that's part of the reason why I didn't wrestle at Cal, because I couldn't get through the opponent. But so the NCAA is to me, they're instead of encouraging the competition, fair competition, they're discouraging it. And I find the whole thing about, well, they only have 72 scholarships as opposed to what is it, 82 or 90?
85 is the full complement. Yeah,
85. Well, that's I just don't buy it. Anyway, that's my thought on that. I hope that this next letter gets approved, because they sent one letter that was shut down.
Yeah,
and they reapplied, and I hope it gets accepted.
Yeah, I think they were 6-0 then, or something like that. Yeah, like you said, you should be rewarded when you move up. You know, like you know, it's kind of funny. Boxing is kind of, even though you're rewarded for moving up, it depends upon, you know, like who you fight when you're moving up.
Right.
But you know, so you know, I think I think we're all, you know, we're seeing, you know, this kind of inequity in all sports, but you know, it seems you know, when it happens in football, especially around this time of year when you're getting ready to get your college football rankings, you know, the playoff rankings, it seems especially important, you know, that you have some excellent bowl matchups. You know, I remember, you know, you were referring back to some of the games that we had during COVID. I mean, you know, it was horrible to watch, but you know, you know, because of the epidemic, you know, this is what we had to endure. But anyway.
Well, besides that, the other way that they're hurting them is then they lose out on any of the revenues from the bowl games.
correct.
Right.
How's that fair?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's, you know, the reason, or that's the reason why you want to make a bowl game on either side, win or lose, because of that revenue. Like, you know, we all talk about, you know, the business of, well, you know, there is a business of the bowl games, and like you said, you know, technically they might be able to get back in, but it would be horrible to see them lose out and someone go to a bowl game with a 6-7 record, or you know,
Right.
whatever. So let's see how this goes. So guys, let's see. Running right along here. Let's talk about what happened last week in the NFL. Of course, the bye week last week was for the 49ers, the Lions, the Broncos, and the Jags. So we'll start out with C.J. Stroud. Now, you know, I always talk about, you know, I don't want to see a high-scoring game and all this and that, you know, but for those of us, let's see, what game was that came on at 10 o'clock, and it got a little out of hand, so they switched over to the Bucks, the Jaguars, and I mean, excuse me, the Texans and
Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that was the game they switched over, because at least out here, because the game that we were watching. It got a little out of hand. I'm not sure what game.
Could have been the Ravens and
the
Seahawks.
Ravens and the Seahawks. Yeah, I think because the Ravens just, you know, smashed the Seahawks, and about, I think it was maybe about the fourth quarter, or maybe even the bottom of the third, that they switched over, and the game got exciting just watching this young man, because it was the first time that I had actually seen C.J. Stroud, and that last winning drive, you know, I just, you know, of course, it had nothing to do with the fact that I had Tank Dell on my fantasy team, but it was very good to watch. But
Yeah,
uh,
they had three guys amongst the receivers have huge games. Collins had a big game. Schultz had,
yeah, Nico
Dalton Schultz
Collins, Tank Dell,
and
uh,
Dalton Schultz.
yeah, and of course CJ. But CJ, I mean, he outdo Baker. When Baker and the Bucks went in for that last touchdown, I was sure it was over. I'm like, okay, the game is over. I think it was under a minute left.
Yeah, there was 40
When,
something seconds left, I
yeah,
think.
and
Under a minute, yeah.
it was that one long pass to Tank Dell. And then the touchdown by Tank Dell that actually won that game. But yeah, it did get very exciting. So, as I said, Tank Dell comes up with two big catches, including the game-winning drive. Uh, are you surprised that the Texans are at 500? We talked so bad about them at the beginning of the year, and C.J. Stroud, and whether or not he was going to be able to handle the team. And there was a lot of criticism about C.J. Stroud and the Texans at the beginning of the season. Dave, are you surprised that the Texans are at 500?
No, no. I watched them spank the Steelers 30-6 in the week before that they had pummeled the Jaguars. And I know that when they came in to play the Steelers, their offensive line was completely in disarray. And plus, they had a castaway. They had Kendrick Green, he's on IR now, I believe, from that game. But he was a starter. But they have just figured out a way to keep on ticking. And the Jaguars are not a bad team. So no, I'm not surprised. I'm actually impressed with the coaching and what they've done, especially to keep the offensive line together with all the injuries that they had. Because if you're not protecting C.J. Stroud, well, then C.J. Stroud's not going to be able to do what he's been doing. And it's one thing if you have an offensive line that's intact and healthy. It's another thing if you've been losing multiple players and having to plug and play new people. So I feel I kind of like what Baker Mayfield's been doing. I kind of feel bad for him, but I'm happy for the Texans because everybody thought that they were going to, or at least maybe not everybody, but I thought at the beginning of the season they were maybe a 5 or 6 win team, and they've proven to be a lot better than that.
Bill, what's your thoughts? Had you picked them to be more than a 5 or 6 win team?
But slightly more. 7-10 was my preseason prediction, and they'll probably end up exceeding that. Obviously, the two things that stood out to me when the new crew, the new front office came in, they clearly, and once again, we talk about the Patriot way. Now they're doing the Patriot way better than the Patriots are doing it right now, partially because they have a vastly superior quarterback to the one that suits up for the Patriots. Coleridge Bernard Stroud IV is better in every single way that a young quarterback can be better than another young quarterback than Michael McCorkle-Jones. He's got a stronger arm. He's a better athlete. He sees things faster. He's more accurate. His natural accuracy is rare. And the player I compared Coleridge Bernard Stroud IV to when I watched him at Ohio State, and I mentioned this once before, a name that I'm sure will somewhat delight Mr. Matthew Scott is Warren Moon. He has a Warren Moon-like ability to place the football. Extremely accurate, very poised, and he's just beginning. He's going to continue to get better. And as they put better teams around him, I can see that team winning the South and holding on to it for a while if they're smart about what they do with the salary cap and things like that, because they do have a quarterback on his rookie deal. To Tampa, and Baker Reagan Mayfield. if you've watched him all season, and I have, he's stopped doing the one thing. He's had one really bad game, but he's been good in a couple of games, and frankly, terrific in about 3 games. So what he stopped doing is trying to prove to everybody he was worth the number 1 overall pick, right? Trying to make plays that can't be made, trying to make throws that can't be made. He's still pulling it down and running it at times and making plays with his feet and, extending plays and occasionally even taking some deep shots when they're there, especially to Mike Evans. And he's helped Mike Evans to have a fantastic year. In fact, if Mike Evans has a 1,000-yard season, I'm convinced that he will set an NFL record for the most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons to begin a career. So hats off to Mike Evans if indeed he stays healthy, because that's the only thing that'll stop him is injury. I mean, Baker has done a great job of unlocking or keeping him unlocked, whatever term you want to use, despite the fact that that's the guy that teams really try to take away. He hasn't let them. He's helped Trey Palmer to develop. They have a young tight end in Cade Otton, who is on his way to being sort of a poor man's Greg Olsen. They have a nice offensive mix, and they still have some good players left on defense, but they need an infusion of talent, particularly on the pass rush. If they can get their pass rush going again and fill the hole that was left by Sean Murphy-Bunting in their secondary, they can go back to being a very good defense. And if they can be a very good defense and take what they have on offense, they'll go back to being a contender in their version of the South, right? So we saw maybe 2 possible kings of the South in that game, because I believe the Titans are coming close to the end of their run. The Colts are probably another year or 2 away. So it'll be interesting between the Colts and Texans, but I think the Texans have the slight edge. And like I said, Tampa Bay is in a very winnable division, though I think that the Saints will hold on to the South this year. The Saints are an older team, and I could see Tampa having the Saints are an older team in a lot of key spots, I'll put it that way. But I could see the Tampa, if they do the right things, having a chance to prevail in the future.
Yeah, just like talking about Tank Dell, if you had Otten was very instrumental in Tampa Bay's last drive, catching a very important, I think it was a 3rd down catch that kept their drive alive, and then catching the TD for the buck.
Yep.
So it was a good day for receivers in that game. Mr. Scott, how are you doing this evening?
Very good, very good, very good, gentlemen. Glad to be able to join you.
Yeah, we were just talking about the Texans and them being 500, and we had Bill talking about young C.J. Stroud, the rookie. He was kind of comparing him to Warren Moon. What did you think about that, Mr. Scott?
Well, I heard that, and that's pretty high praise, coming from Bill Carroll. I mean, Warren Moon, one of my all-time favorites when he came to the Vikings, and the whole Denny Green regime. I tell you, the whole Denny Green regime just rejuvenated this town, this team, but the young man Stroud is really, he's really come on. I'm really surprised because I have a good friend in Houston. I usually get down there every year. I was supposed to go down there a few weeks ago. Didn't make it, and some of the other guys went, and they said, "Man, very impressive. Things are looking up. Things are looking good for Houston." I don't know if my old friend is still involved with the team. A guy by the name of Romeo Crennel.
Oh, Rack.
He had been involved with that team in the front office, I think. Now I'd have to ask and see if he's still involved. I knew him pretty well. Him and his sister and his brother-in-law. But yeah, the Houston team, boy, I like to see a nice young team come out, a good quarterback, and should be some good things coming from them. They're going to be on my board.
All right. Dave, the Colts beat up on the Panthers 27-13. Panthers quarterback Bryce Young was 24 for 39, 173 yards, 1 TD, 3 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 11.2.
Ooh.
Bill, Dave, did the Panthers pick the wrong QB?
I think it's still too early to tell. My question is what weapons does he have? DJ Shark is hurt. He has Adam Thielen, and then he has a couple tight ends, Hurst and is it Hawkinson?
No,
but
they don't have Hawkinson. We should.
No, Hawkinson is
Vikings. Yeah,
Tremble, Tommy Tremble. I'm sorry,
Tommy Tremble. Yeah,
but really, I just don't think he has many weapons around there. Yeah, I think he's right now. He's like one deep at wide receiver, and he has a couple tight ends. They need to build a stronger team around him, and so I don't think that's. I think it's still too early to tell whether he's the problem. I think he needs to have better players around him so that he has people to throw to, and he has people keeping him on his feet.
What do you think about Bryce Young there, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, good young quarterback. These guys have to kind of earn their stripes when they come through, and I certainly agree with the other comments about having people around him. Run game, defense. I mean, especially as a young guy, he's going to need that. So I think he's on an upswing. I mean, they're not really on making my to-do list right now, but I mean, I think in the near future they may be able to do. And I'm not sure what to think of the Colts in that game. Did Jonathan Taylor actually come back? Does anyone?
Yeah, he had 95 yards in the last game, which is just this past week. So yeah, he's very much back, and he's probably about to have his first 100-yard game in this upcoming game.
Okay,
that was just his second game. No, first game back, wasn't it, Bill? This is his second.
Well, he played sparingly in the first game. This is not yesterday, but Sunday's game was the first game where he was like back. Like he did almost nothing in his first game back. But
Zach Moss, had a great performance that game, so there was no need to rush him back in as we first thought. So, I understand, why he didn't get much play that first game, but everyone knew, especially after he got the extension, that he was going to be their number one back. So
he did get his bag.
He got a bag. He didn't get
a bag, not his bag. The bag was slightly smaller and not quite as full as the one he was hoping for.
You got a tip to come back.
To use a term back that would be familiar to me and you, Mr. Scott, he got a coin purse. He got grandma's coin purse. He didn't.
Okay. I got it.
Bill, the Chiefs, they took on the fans in Germany, coming away with a 21-14 victory. Bill, which has become more surprising for the Chiefs, the play of their defense or the lack of offense that we used to see, with 30 here, 40 here. I mean, they've had a couple of good games, but they haven't had the spectacular type of games that we used to see out of the Chiefs. So what's your take on this, Bill? Is the defense coming on and now carrying the offense where it used to be the other way around?
Well, two things. They are still experimenting with things, right? The thing I like about the Chiefs, that makes the Chiefs so interesting to watch, particularly when you start breaking down what they're doing, is how many different things they try. They still are breaking out things and saying, "Oh, this is work. Yes, no. Can we tweak it?" Unlike teams that sort of want to have their offense somewhat set. I mean, they still are, doing things specific to certain game plans, but they have the sort of what their offense is set by about week 1, maybe week 2 or 3. Not the Chiefs. The Chiefs' offense is going to look radically different 3 or 4 weeks from now. It's like a laboratory. It's an offensive laboratory they have there in Kansas City. So especially if you watch all 22, they're experimenting with blocking schemes. They're experimenting with alignments. They're experimenting with packages. One game they'll go a heavy ace or tiger or whatever with a lot of 2 tight ends. Noah Gray, snap percentage at 57%, and almost no 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. Then the next week, it's like, oh, there's Justin Watson frolicking downfield. So they are a work in progress on offense. Mark my words, when it gets cold, they'll be very good on offense. Mark my words. Well, it might be cold where some of us are already, but when I mean cold, it's cold everywhere, except maybe where you are, James. By the time we get close to gift giving and things like that, and snow, once again, James excluded, snow where everyone else lives on the ground, they'll be fine on offense. I just wrote an article, in fact, for those that like to read articles on Team MBS Sports about the champagne problems of Kansas City's offense. So while the term champagne problems, probably most of you can guess what it means, it also is the title of a Taylor Swift song. I couldn't pass that up. But their defense has been a top 6 or 7 defense pretty much this whole season. And they're still sort of locking in. Like, there's parts of their defense they're getting some people back and things like that. So if they continue to play defense at this level, on the offense, what I strongly believe will solidify and continue to improve. If you're going to beat the Chiefs, beat them now. That'd be my advice, because you're not going to beat them, when December and January roll around.
Yeah, Mr. Scott. Unlike the Vikings that play in their dome, Kansas City plays out there in the cold, like Pittsburgh and some of the other teams. And a lot of teams root going to Kansas City in December and January. And being old school there, Mr. Scott, what do you think? You got Patrick Mahomes. I mean, actually throwing passes behind his back, in the game. I mean, you saw. I mean, their version of the shovel pass is much different than what we see from most teams. Mr. Scott, what do you think about this newfangled offense that Andy Reid and the Chiefs keep putting out there?
Well, up until this game, and where was this last game? Was it in Germany, I think?
Yeah, Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt, yeah. And those whole things with these Frankfurt and UK, I mean, the travel, the timing, the whole thing, those games just seem kind of, they don't have their home crowd. They don't have the familiarity around them. So those games are a little different. And then me watching football at 8:30 in the morning, I mean, it's, but I think the Chiefs, at least in that particular game, going against, Miami is formidable. They have been formidable. They've been a juggernaut on offense. And I think the Chiefs, buckled down in that game and they say, hey, we don't want to do a shootout today. And they had the defense to kind of keep that game under wraps, and they knew they could rely on Mr. Mahomes to get the job done. So I still think the Chiefs are going to be formidable. I think they're just kind of on cruise control right now. I think that they're a lot better than they've been showing. I think but I think the engine's getting warmed up and it's getting revved up. And I think this second half is going to be very, 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 very interesting. I think Bill made some, real good comments about them, even in spite of the analytics references. But again, just briefly on the analytics thing, the gentleman last week mentioned something about Bill Mazeroski in the 1960 World Series. Now, analytics is not going to tell you Bill Mazeroski is the man. It's not going to tell you the New York Yankees, Bucky Dent, choking up halfway up the bat, is going to hit one over the green monster to to lead the Yankees to the series. But anyway, as far as the fact that the Chiefs, I look them to be certainly Super Bowl contenders, certainly. But Miami's still dangerous, and they play those games in Miami, and they're going to run up the score on you. So, but I'm still Mr. Mahomes is, to me, he's still the guy.
What do you think there, Dave? I mean, he referred to the fans as being, a good team, but they're a team that doesn't seem like they can win against other contenders. Buffalo beat them. Now, when they went to measure up against the Chiefs, they looked a little sluggish. I understand, and everybody was talking about, I believe it was last week when Bo was saying, he felt that the fans had an advantage because they got there first. But it didn't look like that in the game.
They could have been in England for the past 100 years. It wouldn't have mattered.
and I mean, the way that they handled Tyreek, it might have been a little. It was probably better for you guys because I had to watch it at 6:30 in the morning. But what was your takeaway there, Dave?
Well, I mean, one thing I did pick the Chiefs last week, but it was with the reservation because the Chiefs they waited until Thursday to travel, so they didn't arrive in Germany until Friday. And so I'm not surprised that maybe their offense looked a little sluggish. And Miami had been there during the week. But I mean, still, Miami held Kansas. Whether it was from the jet lag or for whatever, Miami's defense actually performed better than expected. But I don't think it's surprising to see these teams when they have to travel overseas. To me, it's kind of like Thursday night football. One of the disadvantages of Thursday night football, if you're on a short week, is that teams don't have that time to game plan. They can't install a specific game plan against their opponent because there's no time to practice it. And I think with these overseas games, you lose time because of the travel. And what the Chiefs did is they opted to stay in Kansas City, practice, and I think that they even did like a walkthrough Thursday before they flew out. But to what Bill was saying, with all of these different schemes that they're presenting, and they're actually trying these out on the field. Well, just imagine these poor defensive coordinators around the league figuring out how are we going to stop these guys? Because you're not going to know 1 week to the next what they're going to throw at you. So I think the arrow's pointing up for Kansas City, and then for Miami, I want to see. Well, hey, was holding Kansas City to 21 points? Was that a function of jet lag on Kansas City's part, or did Miami's defense really perform that well? And if they're performing that well, maybe the arrow's pointing up for them too.
Yeah, we'll see. That division. As we thought during the first of the season, it seems like it'll be coming down to Miami and the Bills, but we'll see how that works out. After house cleaning, the Raiders took apart the new team. They look like a new team with their coach Antonio Pierce. A lot of us remember Antonio Pierce being as a Giant.
Or a jackrabbit at Long Beach Poly High School, even.
Yeah, okay, well, see, what color shoes do you wear, Bill? But this new Raiders quarterback, Adam O'Connell, was 16 for 25, 209 yards. He had a QBR of 82 and a half. The Raiders got 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 from Jacobs and another one from Myers. And the Giants quarterback Daniel Jones is out with a season-ending ACL injury. So pick your poison here, Dave. You want to talk about the newly infused Raiders or the sagging Giants? Pick your poison.
Well, I'm going to say the Raiders, because the thing with the Giants is they weren't that good even before Daniel Jones's injury, and I think that the contrast between this last game that the Raiders played and what was happening before, I think that was pretty amazing. The speech that Antonio Pierce gave, apparently,
yep.
I think it helped cement the demise of the other coach. But
McDaniel.
basically, this guy, he's
McDaniel.
What's that?
Josh McDaniel.
Josh McDaniel, and because basically, and I don't think that Anthony Pierce meant no insult at all to the Patriots. Quite the reverse. He was basically saying that when he was with the Giants and the Patriots had, they were the best team. They had the best quarterback, the best coach, and all this. Well, it's like, well, how are you going to beat these guys? But they were convinced that, hey, even against the best team, we can beat them. And then Josh McDaniel kind of, I guess, was insulted because he kind of used the Patriots as an example. But these players rallied around that message. Okay, it's us versus them, and he hit it. And so then you have a player like Max Crosby. Okay, he was on the Pat McAfee the other show, and they were showing the clip of the locker room celebration. And I believe it was Crosby before the game brought in cigars. They had victory cigars. They were expecting to go out and win. That's how confident they were. And so that they were prepared, and I really, that's the impact that coaching can have a team. Now, can they continue? Well, we're gonna find out here over the next few games. But I'm very impressed with the messaging of Anthony Pierce. He gave a message that these players rallied around, and he showed how a coach can impact performance. And I like it. And just to see those players celebrating, they were so happy. It was like they were released from some big burden. So
yes, that burden was named Josh McDaniels.
Exactly. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
Mr. Scott, what did you think about the Raiders?
Well, I have to co-sign those comments, but I don't know how elated you can get about that with the Giants team that, boy, they were in bad shape before the game, and I don't see, they're going to just be playing out the string. I mean, looking for draft choices but Raiders, with the new coach, and it's amazing how things can flip the script like that in football with motivation and O'Connell, and I'm sure we'll talk about Mr. Dobbs at some point. Maybe JK3 might not want to talk about that, but
right, you haven't played the Steelers. I can just talk about the
we're not concerned about that. We're not concerned about that. That's not a team we're concerned about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, Bill, close this up. What who you want to talk about? You want to talk about the Raiders? You want to talk about the Giants?
Well, I want to talk about Champ Kelly. So if Anthony Champ Kelly gets a legitimate shot to be general manager, what it will mean? Well, one, it'll mean obviously that we're seeing a sea change, because that was one of the last bastions of, almost all whiteness in the NFL. And now with Ansah in Minnesota, uh, Chris Greer holding on to his position despite the fact there was a bit of a power struggle in Miami. A handful of others, Ryan Poles in Chicago. I believe that Tim Terry, who is right now on the Kansas City staff, is going to be getting a lot of interviews. We're seeing a sea change. Like, for a long time, that was one of the last sort of almost unbreakable glass ceilings in the NFL. And if indeed, Anthony Champ Kelly, who at one point when he was playing in the United Indoor Football League was a player, a wide receivers coach, and a general manager for the Horsemen of Lexington in the UIFL, all at the same time. So this is a person who clearly is familiar with multitasking, was a pretty good player himself back in his days at Kentucky, and I hope he's given a legitimate chance. So if he and Antonio Pierce can become sort of that unit that works together between GM and head coach, we could see a revival of the old commitment to excellence in Oakland.
Yeah, that's we should see. Let's see. Let's go on here. The Saints. Bill, the Saints use their Swiss Army knife, tight end, wide receiver, quarterback, Tyson Hill, and the play of defensive back Paulson
Adebo. Yep, from Stanford.
To beat the Bears 24-17. Adebo had 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery, while Hill tied a record held by Frank Gifford. We're probably the only show that have guys on it know who the hell Frank Gifford is without looking it up, by passing for a TD and catching another. The Bears took their quarterback that you had so much praise for last week. He had 5 turnovers. So, Bill, take another bite of that apple. You want to talk about the 2-7 Bears or the 5-4 Saints?
Well, I wasn't so much heaping praise on Tyson Bagent. I was saying they managed to simplify things enough that a guy who had so few reps coming in was able to operate the offense at a reasonably high level. It was exciting to see what he was able to do, but he's not a starting quarterback. Their starting quarterback is coming back soon. Justin Fields has been cleared to practice fully. He will be back, not this game, but the game following. And now they'll be able to truly unlock what they wanted their offense to be this whole time. But Tyson Bagent managed to, keep the ship from sinking entirely. He's got enough talent that he should be, as I said before, a high-level backup in the league for a very long time. Talked about his dad last week as well, who was an awesome interview and an amazing character. But the Bears are a team that they need 2 things to happen. They need to, not win too many games, frankly, this year, and they need Carolina to be terrible. So if Carolina is the worst team in the league, and they're one of the worst teams in the league, they could conceivably have the 1st and 2nd, or maybe the 1st and 3rd pick in the upcoming draft. And while they won't need both of them, they can now take those picks and parlay them into more picks and move around the board. If they are sold on Justin Fields at quarterback, that now unlocks the potential of auctioning off maybe both the 1st and 3rd pick to teams that do need quarterbacks, which means you can now get a boatload of picks back for them, and now you can rebuild your team because the talent level is not there. Their offensive line is bad, and they are number 32 out of 32 in sacks. So you can't be lower than 32. So they need pass rushers. They need pass receivers. They have a good running back, but Khalil Herbert's been hurt, though he's now back off of IR. It's probably been another week before he's full speed. They have a tight end in Cole Kmet, but they still need a number 1 receiver. DJ Moore maybe is a number 1. He's sort of borderline number 1. In an ideal world, though, they'd have a true alpha at number 1 receiver. that would mean that Moore could then go into the slot and be a terrific number 2, and then that kicks Darnell Mooney out to the speed Z, and now you've got something. And then they need to, like I said, rebuild almost the entire offensive line, and then they need to find pass rushers on defense. They need one more corner, they need one more safety, and 2 more linebackers. But other than that, everything's fine.
Other than that, okay. Dave?
Well, it's pretty amazing. We're just at the halfway mark, and we're already talking about teams positioning themselves for the draft for next year. That's a pretty sad case. Cardinals, Panthers, now the Bears, the Giants, and it's not a popular take in Pittsburgh. It upsets some people, but I just don't like the idea of teams just, like the Cardinals trading away Dobbs before a football game. Well, and then they have this guy that has almost zero experience playing in a game. I mean, that's basically tanking is what I look at. Maybe the players out there were playing as hard as they could, but when you trade away your only viable quarterback, I don't respect that. I have no respect for it. And now I know that a lot of Steeler fans, and I'm not going to talk about the Steelers too much, but they're angry because, well, Mike Tomlin just gets winning seasons. He's just 9-8, and he hasn't won a playoff game in this time. But the fact of the matter is that the Steelers try to win every year, no matter what their roster is.
Yep.
So with New Orleans, I think they're in an interesting division because, we just talked about Atlanta and Bryce Young not having the weapons around him. And then you have the Buccaneers. I mean, the Panthers are 1-7, so I don't see them being relevant. But right now, I see the Saints. They have a possibility of winning that division. They're in first right now. They're not the greatest team. That they've not doing so well, but they're using the weapons that they have, trying to win games, and I respect that. And so, looking at these two franchises, I would rather talk about the New Orleans Saints and what they're trying to do in order to claw their way in to a division title and on to the playoffs.
Mr. Scott, what do you want to talk about? Those 2-7 Bears that are in your division, and I think they have to play you is it twice, or have they played you once already? Or do you want to talk about the 5-4 Saints?
Well, we play the Saints coming up this week, and I'm a little scared of the Saints. I mean, I think that could be. Some people refer to these games as kind of trap games, and then we'll get into the Vikings probably a little later. And the Bears, they're in the division. I think that they're just, Tyson Bagent, D3 quarterback from a place that's
D2, Shepherd's D2. They're in the same conference as where our friend David once used to play his trade.
Okay. But yet and still, obviously he's a stopgap. I mean, it's one of those things where, and I think their quarterback, Bears quarterback, was starting to show some life. I mean, I think that things were starting to go good until the injury. So, what are they playing for now? We'll see if the quarterback can come back. I think he has the type of injury that he'll probably be back in a game or two. I don't know. What is it? You think, Bill, he'll be back? Or
yeah, he's starting to practice already. He's cleared to practice. He'll be soon cleared to practice with no restrictions. So they'll give him this game to get back the timing and everything, and then he'll be playing the week after.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they've already got 7 losses. I mean, so this season is kind of a wash for them. And so hopefully they'll be just, wins for the Vikings to move the Vikings on. But I'm a little bit worried about this New Orleans game coming up. I think that's going to be very interesting.
Well, Mr. Scott, you wanted to talk about your Vikings, so I'm going to give you a chance here. 5 days after being traded to the Vikings, Mr. Dobbs rallies the Vikings to a 31-28 victory over the Falcons. Mr. Scott, are you more excited that he was able to do this on only 5 days' notice? Talking about a stopgap. Well, he's actually more than a stopgap because Cousins is out for the season. So, Mr. Scott, what's your thoughts on the game and your team moving forward?
Very, very, very interesting. And that, well, first of all, in regards to Joshua Dobbs, I mean, kudos to him. Kudos to Coach O'Donnell. Kudos to the general manager for really, here's a person that has played all year. He's seen a lot of these defense, and plus he's got experience. He's an experienced quarterback. So all of those things really kind of came together for a real good situation in that game. I mean, more than nobody was expecting that, because see, the individual that they had, Mr.
Jaron Hall from BYU, where he played
Jared
both
Hall
baseball and football. Yeah,
Jared Hall, he actually came in, but one of the things when I saw him come in, he was smaller than I thought he was. I mean, his presence was somewhat, I don't know, small, but he came in and he was doing a good job. And then he got a little anxious when he got by the goal line. I think he saw that touchdown. He wanted it. But if he had slid instead of taking that hit, it would have been a better outcome for him. But in retrospect, it allowed Joshua Dobbs to come in. And so what he did and how he ran that offense and how him and the coach, I tell you, they really put together quite a performance in that game. I mean, he really showed a lot of moxie. And the reason I think that this New Orleans game is a little scary, sometimes that euphoria type of thing can kind of wear off. I mean, so he's going to have a whole week of practice, which is, going to be a good thing for him. And the problem with the Vikings is they can't run the ball. I mean, it's even gotten so bad that there's been rumblings about Adrian Peterson. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's been talk. But I mean, that would help a lot. And so that's what I've got to see if they can really get that running game going. But again, what happened with Joshua Dobbs and what he did, I mean, I don't think I've seen anything like that. I don't think I've seen anybody come in with just a few things being thrown in when you wasn't even expecting to play, and lead your team to a victory like that. So yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see. This next game is going to really say a lot. I think he's probably going to be the quarterback for the rest of the year. I don't know how the concussion is for Mr. Hall, but I know they did sign another quarterback. Who was it?
They brought Sean
Mannion.
Yeah, they brought Mannion up off the practice squad. Yeah.
Yeah, they brought Mannion up. So but yeah, it's a superlative performance. Dobbs is
the pastronaut.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, they say he's an aerospace engineer and he had interned with NASA, and that's all well and good. But I mean, what he did on the football thing is what I'm concerned about, and he did a very good job. And obviously, he picked up the offense well enough to be effective with it. He had enough, and he has good mobility. He really, 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 really showed a lot out there to me. So I was impressed with him. And again, for the GM to pull off that trade and say, this is the guy we want, with the fact that he has played all year, he started all of the Arizona games, and he beat the Cowboys.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm enthused.
Yeah. Well, speaking of analytics, Kwesi Adofo-Ansah, as you probably know, got his start in analytics when he was working previously. He was what's called contract analyst. He was one of the people that helped manage the cap and then worked his way up. His basketball background is actually his athletic background. He didn't play football, but he's a person that got his start in analyzing data about player performance and figuring out to whom you should be offering contracts. So the Vikings have embraced analytics, which is part of why they brought in Joshua Dobbs. But he's the Pastronaut, as they now call him, got a shout out from the John Glenn Research Center, where he'd spent some time during his internship. Part of what allowed him to pick up, and he didn't know the offensive nomenclature, but he knew the concepts. But it was his ability to visually memorize things that played into, once again, his past training as an aeronautical engineer, because he was used to visualizing complex problems and solving them, right? So it very much played into his ability to play with so few, in fact, no practices with the ones, right? This is what differentiates what he did from what Baker Mayfield did with the Rams in a similar situation. The difference is the Rams already knew they'd lost their starter, and I mean, their projected starter. Like in the case of this, Jaron Hall was the projected starter, and he goes out almost immediately. In the case of Baker, they knew they'd lost Stafford. When he came in, he started practicing with the ones right away. He only had a few days, only 3 real practices and a walkthrough. So in the case of Dobbs, he wasn't even practicing with the ones, right? He's practicing with he's the scout team guy. And Hall's practicing with the ones. He literally didn't know all the names of his teammates. This is what makes, like I said, it's like something happens in a movie. It's something that you would see in a movie. It's an amazing story. And whatever happens to the rest of Joshua Dobbs' career, this is something that should be never forgotten. And it was magical to watch it. I watched every second of that game.
Yeah, you want to make any comments on there? Seeing how they're heaping all this praise on what used to be our third string quarterback.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I mean, right now it's all about
that too.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, James.
I said, no, I'm going to bring you some tough questions on that when we come to the Steelers.
But, pretty soon the question is going to go beyond Josh Dobbs with the Vikings. But this game was, I think, about Josh Dobbs and this team rallying around the guy. And what I loved seeing on the sideline was literally him there and the team huddled up trying to figure out, okay, well, this is the way my cadence is. Here's how we're going to do the snaps right before he goes out there. One of the comments he made was he referred to one of his coaches. And remember, he left Pittsburgh in 2021. And that was after they had traded him once to Jacksonville.
Right.
Then he came back to Pittsburgh. And since he left Pittsburgh, he's been to Cleveland, Detroit, Tennessee, and Arizona.
Yep.
Okay. But after the game, after the Vikings game, what he said was he was first concerned about Jaron Hall. I hope he's okay. But then he continued. But then it was, hey, if you are playing, you got to go out there and play. The team still expects you to go out and win and play good football. In this league, there's never an excuse for your circumstance. I learned that from Coach T, referring to Mike Tomlin. And so for me, for Dobbs to think of a coach from 2 years ago, 5 teams ago, that says a lot about Coach Tomlin. And I think that they talk about coaching trees, right? Well, there's also the impact that the coaches have on players. And I think what the Vikings have in Josh Dobbs is he's a very smart guy, the rocket scientist, but he's very competitive. He's going to give you everything that he has. He's maybe not the most talented guy. He's not the fastest guy, but he'll take off and run with what he has. He'll pass with what he has. And I think that it's very encouraging. I hope that he continues playing for the Vikings, continues to start for them, and then he can win them some games and keep the Vikings competitive. But yeah, again, and I think Anthony had mentioned that sometimes the euphoria wears off, and hopefully they can keep that momentum going. So that's my thoughts on that. It was fun. I mean, to see it on the sideline, I thought was cool.
Yeah,
that's football.
Cool.
Yeah, it really was. Mr. Scott, the Packers end their 4-game losing streak, trouncing the Rams 20-3. Aaron Jones ends the first half scoring drought for the Packers. I think it's the only team that went longer than the Steelers. At 3-5, Mr. Scott, should the Packers start looking more toward the future? In this draft, I mean, we talk about, of course, we don't see, unless they trade up, we don't see going for Caleb Williams, but there's a lot of other things that, I mean, you can just look at almost any position and the Packers need help. What's your thoughts, Mr. Scott, since they're in your division?
Well, I didn't know Aaron Jones was even going to play. He's been hurt. He's been out a lot. He's the remnants of what the Packers were when they had Aaron Rodgers and the other receiver that went to the Raiders. And I don't know what has happened to the Rams. I mean, I just, that one is very perplexing to me. How all of a sudden they're no good anymore.
That's an easy one. Salary cap.
Well, they didn't have Matt Stafford in that game, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah, and so that's, they're kind of done. The Packers, I'll have to see some more. We'll talk about, I guess, who they're coming up with this week. It's going to be a week-to-week thing with them. Be interesting when we play them. And then Detroit, in this division, where's the great Demetrius? I mean, how was he doing? I mean, I know I wasn't able to make it last week. Was Demetrius here last week?
No, Demetrius has actually been on the road for a few weeks. I was trying to get him today, but he's actually out.
Yeah, I just want to give him such great applause for his great Lions team. I mean, I know. So they're in control of the division now, but I don't think it's going to end up with them winning. I mean, I think that, the Vikings can get past this Saints team and start really getting some momentum with their schedule. But back to the Packers, I think they're going to be also Rams this year, rebuilding, getting their quarterback some confidence, getting them some help. But I don't expect them to be much of a factor in this division.
Okay. Bill, I want to kind of pick your brain on this one here. The Commanders, they beat the Pats 20-17. 1 week after Coach Belichick gets his 300th win, the Commanders safety Jatavius Martin, the late interception sealed Bill's fate from getting 301. Pats are now 2-7 for the first time since Belichick's rookie season, and the Pats are the only team without a win outside their division. Bill, do you think such an embarrassing season will make Bill voluntarily retire?
No, in a word. I mean, the man has 331 wins. he needs 16 more to catch Shula and 17 more to pass him. I do think, as a football historian, I think it matters to him trying to get that record. Now, I also believe that if they have another season like this one, the decision will no longer be in his hands. So they've got to at least start showing a little bit of life before this season's over to give Mr. Kraft the confidence that it's worth sticking it out with William Stephen Belichick. The main issue they have is talent acquisition. They have drafted poorly, consistently poorly. And they've turned these mistakes when they move these players on into lower round draft picks, right? You take a guy in the first and then flip him for a fifth. I mean, they've done that with a couple of players. They cannot draft certain positions at all to save their lives. Their best pass rushers are guys that have come via free agency. They have not drafted well at wide receiver since, I don't know, Troy Brown. They once had a magic, at least when it came to tight end, which is now now evaporated. Hunter Henry is serviceable. The other tight ends on their roster are not quite even Hunter Henry. Their offensive line, which was once their pride and joy, has essentially collapsed. As I mentioned, they are near the bottom of the league in both sacks and pressure rate. They don't turn teams over anymore. They're one really bright and shining light. And there's a player they did draft, who's gotten hurt, and that's Christian Gonzalez, who I think would have been contender for Rookie of the Year if he'd stayed healthy. But now he's hurt. So they don't have really anything you should hang your hat on. They're a running team that can't run the ball. They're a passing team that can't throw the ball. When they do throw the ball, they throw it, I think, near the lowest in yards per attempt. I think they're at 6.1 or something, which is, I think, third or fourth worst in the NFL. They run the ball at about 3.7 yards per attempt, which is about third or fourth worst in the NFL. Their scoring is in third or fourth worst in the NFL, and they're giving up 25.3 points per game. When you're scoring almost 9 points per game less than you're giving up almost 9 points per game more than you're scoring, you're not going to win a lot of games. So, yeah, I think he'll keep coming back because he doesn't want to go out on this. But like I said, if next season's like this season, I don't think the choice will be in his own hands at that point.
What do you think, Dave? Do you think an embarrassing season like this, and I mean, I'm not saying that prospects look any better for next year, but and maybe you say he even wins 4 games this season and 6 games next season. It still means he has 2 seasons at least to catch up with Don. So I mean, Dave, what do you think? I mean, pride is quite, as they say, pride goeth before a fall.
Well, the thing about Bill Belichick is he's a football historian, and he knows that 20 years from now, the only thing people are going to remember are how many wins does he have. And just like with Tom Brady during his career, when they would run up scores, they'd be winning 24-7, fourth quarter. Most teams would be handing the ball off. No, he's having Tom Brady throw. Why? Because he knew that all of those touchdowns and all of those yards and that garbage time after they already had the game won, guess what? That's going to count in the stats, and that's all that people are going to remember. Now, Tom Brady is the GOAT. Everybody, there's no disputing he's the GOAT. But that was Bill Belichick's contribution to that. He knew as a historian, hey, we're up 24-7. We can just hand off the ball and eat up the clock. No, he kept the medal down. He kept Tom Brady throwing touchdown passes so that they could win 35-7. And so I don't think Bill Belichick, with that type of mindset, he'll be fired. Kraft will take action before Belichick voluntarily resigns. That's just my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I do. And I happen to see something that was a little strange, something about a rumor of Bill Belichick being traded to somebody, to some other team. I mean, I remember, didn't that happen? Didn't a coach get traded?
It's happened several times. And the last big coaching trade was, of course, John Gruden. And it worked in the sense that the team that got him did win a Super Bowl. They gave up quite a bit to get him. But it's happened a few times. That's how Belichick got to New England. They traded for him.
From Cleveland.
No, from the Jets.
From the Jets. So Belichick, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, if he can turn this thing around, yeah, he can probably coach there as long as he wants. But again, they look pretty bad this year. I mean, they don't have a lot of talent. The quarterback situation is in flux. He doesn't have his Nookie and Brady, and so it's kind of changed the whole tenor for him. I mean, he's got to really push buttons now, and so does he really want to even do it at this point? I mean, it'll be interesting to see.
Mr. Scott, despite getting a great game from Dak Prescott, the Cowboys came up short against the hometown Eagles. The Eagles are now 8-1. The Cowboys are now 5-3. Do you see a team with 4 more losses coming out of this division as a champion or as a division champion? I'm looking at Dallas's schedule here, and although they might win the next 3, taking them to 8-3, when you look at their schedule after let's see, what is it, week 10, they play the Seahawks, the Eagles, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Lions, all in one stretch there. And I can see them losing at least 3 of these games, if not more. They have to play the Eagles again. The Bills have proved, that they're not consistent, but they did beat the Dolphins, and they're playing the Dolphins the week after they play the Bills. So, there's a lot of offense here and some defense if you want to look at the Eagles, the Seahawks, and possibly the Bills. But out of that 5-game stretch, it's possible that they could lose 3 or more of those games. Do you think a team with, say, like Dallas, a team that would possibly end up 10-5? No, 10-7. Yeah, 17 games. 10-7. Do you think that they could be a contender in their conference, let alone a division champ, Mr. Scott?
Boy, they are so iffy to me. I mean, Dak, he can put up numbers. He's looked good, but then it seems like there'll always be a mistake. There'll always be a turnover. There's always something that kind of flips the game around. But they have a lot of talent. And if somehow they really harness it, I still have always kind of liked Dak. And I got some friends that just say, no, man, this isn't going to work. And as far as the Eagles, that 8-1, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's one of those. If you're a heavyweight fighter, 8-1, no knockouts, all decisions. I still think it's kind of up in the air. Obviously, Eagles are in a good spot at 8-1. I haven't looked at their whole schedule coming up yet. But
I'm looking at their schedule now. They play their next 3 games are actually their next 4 games are a little tougher than the Cowboys. They play the Bills. They play the Chiefs this week. Then they play the Bills, the 49ers. They play the Cowboys again. They play the Seahawks. But they end the season, Mr. Scott, playing the Giants twice and the Cardinals once.
Yeah, boy, that's very favorable. They get through this stretch. Yeah, I mean, playoff bound, really. And I see the Cowboys as a wild card candidate. I really do. I mean, I think with their talent, if they can run the ball good, I like the back that they kept. They got rid of Ezekiel, but Pollard, I still think Cowboys got some life. Tough division, but yeah, I think they're a playoff team.
What do you think there, Dave, about that wild card team? As I said, the Eagles finished the season off with their last 3 games, 2 against the Giants and 1 against the Cardinals. So, if they would have a long losing stretch, we would still project them to have at least 11 wins. So, what do you think? Do the Cowboys come out? Does a wild card come out of this division with more, like I'm saying, like 5 losses, 6 losses?
Oh, I think easily. Look at the rest of the rest of the conference. I mean, you have the Vikings now have Josh Dobbs. They're in second place in the NFC North. And I mean, I love Josh Dobbs. I hope he coaches in the NFL someday, but still, I mean, it's a great story, but he's not a franchise quarterback. Then you look at NFC South, you got the Saints at 5-4 in first. The Falcons are in second at 4-5. And then when you look at the NFC West, the 49ers and the Seahawks are both 5-3. They still haven't played each other yet.
Right.
So depending on what happens there, and with 2 wild card teams, I think Dallas is probably in the driver's seat to get one of those wild card teams.
Yep.
I mean, because the NFC, the rest of the NFC is kind of not. It's kind of in disarray right now.
I heard a lot of amens there, Bill. Are you among the choir here?
Well, as you remember in the preseason prediction show, I had the Eagles winning the division at 13-4. I had the Cowboys in the wild card at 11-6. I feel pretty secure in my preseason prediction.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to stick with you here, Bill, because let's talk about these Ratbirds here. They ground the Seahawks to a convincing 37-3 trouncing. I mean, like I said, they cut away from that game and watched the Bucks and the Texans. So I mean, that in itself should tell you, that should give you the Bucks and the Texans, really? I mean, the Bucks,
which was a great game.
Which as I said earlier, it ended up being a great game. So, Bill, are you surprised that the Ratbirds let the trade deadline pass without adding a running back? Nobody knew the young rookie was going to perform like he did.
Some of us did. So Keaton Mitchell ran 4.37. At his pro day. He's explosive. He's the son of course, a former Raven, Anthony Mitchell. He's been good all throughout his career at East Carolina. Broke some of Chris Johnson's career records at East Carolina. He's terrific. He's amazing. The only thing stopping him from doing this before was he didn't get a chance to play. They didn't play him. He's been great. He just finally got a chance to show people how great he is. So we've been agitating, the Keaton Mitchell people have been agitating for him to finally get his chance. He still only got 13 snaps. He played 13 snaps, 138 yards and a touchdown in 13 snaps. If they played him 20 snaps, he might have set a record. So Keaton Mitchell is a person that doesn't get caught from behind. And though he's not very big, he's about 189 pounds, he is stronger than you might expect. He breaks tackles even at that size. I mean, arm tackles, even at that size. He can catch the ball. He can return kicks. He can return punts. I compared him to Naheem Hines coming out, only he's even quicker. Naeem Hines had a 10-yard split in his 40 of 1.52, while Keaton Mitchell came in at 1.48, which is the fastest of everybody's 10-yard split in this past year at the Combine.
What did you think about that Radbirds victory, Mr. Scott? Do you think where do you rank the Radbirds in the AFC hierarchy?
Boy, I gotta look at them as top 2. I mean, I love the way Lamar is playing now. I mean, he's not looking to run. He's still dangerous. The teams still have to be prepared for that. But he's looking to get rid of that ball. And he looks like he's really seeing the field. And and with their running attack to go with it, and his legs and his throwing and their defense. Their defense is really good. So I think they're a top 2 team in the East. I really do. Love the way they're playing.
Dave?
Yeah, I have them as the top team in the AFC right now. It's the most complete team. As Anthony was saying, the offense and they have a new offensive coordinator. So now, instead of Lamar Jackson, rolling out and maybe passing it down the field, you see him sitting in the pocket and he looks comfortable and he's delivering the ball. A lot of people used to claim, well, no, he can't pass long. Well, what was deceiving was even a couple years ago, his accuracy statistics, when you go into the advanced statistics, he was one of the more accurate long ball passers.
Right.
And a lot of people didn't realize that.
He actually struggled on like little swing routes. That's where his struggles were. He always was a great deep. Even in college, he was a great deep ball thrower.
Right.
So people saying he throw the ball deep didn't watch him play.
Right. And so now you have a quarterback that can run if he needs to. They put 298 yards on Seattle, and Seattle was supposed to have a pretty decent defense.
Yep.
And so so the offense is complete. You look at, and Anthony had mentioned the defense. They got pass rushers galore. They can sack quarterbacks. They can pressure quarterbacks. They got secondary guys that are intercepting the ball.
Yeah.
They got, and we haven't even mentioned their 2 inside linebackers, Queen and the guy from the Bears.
Right. And they also have Roquan Smith.
Roquan, right. I mean, this is an awesome team, and they probably have one of the better special teams units. I mean, this is the most complete team, I think, in the NFL right now. So now they can be beat. They have been beat.
Right. The Colts even got them. Yeah.
Still, right now, they got everything in their favor. And then the rushing average of Mitchell, 15.33 yards a carry.
Yeah.
Or 15.3 yards a carry. That's not going to last, but that's ridiculous.
Crazy.
Okay. Gus Edwards rushing for 5 TDs in the last 2 games. Right?
Yep.
3 last week, 2 this week. As much as I hate to admit it, the Ratbirds are dangerous. I'm not going to call them the best team in the AFC. I'm still lacking the Chiefs, but we'll see. So let's move on down our division here. Bill, the Bungles did a convincing win, 24-18 over the Bills on Sunday Night Football.
Yep.
Josh Allen has another crucial INT and a rather suspect intentional grounding call. But we'll get into officiating maybe on one of these shows. But anyway, Joe Charles. He's 31 of 44 for 328 yards and 2 TDs. T. Higgins finally makes an impact. He was targeted 9 times. He caught 8 of them for 110 yards. We just talked about how good the Ratbirds are. what's your thoughts on these Bungles there, Bill?
Yeah. Well, you could see week after week, as he got further away from that calf strain, Joseph Lee Burrow looks more and more like himself. That's the first thing. And though he's not a quote unquote running quarterback, he is a very much a mobile quarterback, both inside and outside the pocket. But when he didn't have the ability to either escape pressure or create outside the pocket, their offense basically collapsed in on itself because they still don't have a very good offensive line. That's the one concern, sort of a broken record on this. I've been saying this for about 3 years. The one reason that I just can't pick this team to make it, all the way to a championship game to, win a Super Bowl, things like that, is at some point they run against a team that exploits the weakness of their offensive line. So until they can be a good enough offensive line, they can not only protect their quarterback against, really good defensive fronts and establish a run game, I'm not ready to buy into them, but they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to play as a wild card team. I think they'll end up, 10-7 or something like that when it's all said and done. And they'll probably win a playoff game and then lose the next round. I mean, it's sort of somewhat predictable what Cincinnati's going to end up doing. But their main issue really is not even on the field, it's off the field. They have a looming cap problem. They've already lost a couple of key players off of their defense, and they're going to lose at least one of those 3 great wide receivers. So they've got some decisions to make. The good news is they draft well. They've been one of the top 4 drafting teams in the past 5 seasons. If that continues, they'll continue to be a contender because they're a team that now, spends a little money in free agency. They used to spend none, but they still are not super active in free agency. And so they need to draft well. But this team's going to make it to the playoffs as Joseph Lee Burrow and the teams and the players around him, especially on the offensive skill group, get back into sync, get back into what they were prior to him going down with the injury. They're going to have a pretty strong finishing close to the season, I believe. And I pretty much told you what would happen with Allen, that he would at some point press and make the key mistake that loses them the game. I've watched his entire career, not just in college, not just in pros, but in the college. When he's Wisconsin, he comes up from Greeley Junior College. He's a very lightly regarded recruit, a 1 or even, at most 2-star, but most people had him rated as a 1-star despite, what he looked like physically. He was so raw in high school and so raw in junior college, so talented, and then so raw in college. Coach Dayball and the structures around him in Buffalo did a great job of getting him from there to here, but everything has to be working perfectly to keep him there. When a player comes that far, once again, he's one of 3 players since 1958 to have era-adjusted college production like his, to even be 60-game starters in the NFL as a quarterback. I'm counting every player who played college football from 1958 at the quarterback position until now. He's one of 3 who managed to even be a long-term starter. Forget great, to even be a 60-game starter in the NFL. So it's a virtual miracle that Josh Allen even is what he is, but it's so difficult to maintain that. It's just such a hard balancing act because he had to come so far so fast.
Mr. Scott, what did you think about that Sunday night football game? Were you expecting the Bills to win? Was this a surprise to you? Was it, like you were expecting Josh Allen to make that, like sitting there with bated breath, just waiting for Josh Allen that you knew he was going to make? Fortunately, I was waiting for Dak to make that mistake. He didn't, but the Eagles still won. But what was your thoughts on that Sunday night football game, Mr. Scott?
Well, I had been a Bills fan, but I just see kind of the air coming out of them. I can't really put my finger on it, but haven't seen any real impressive wins in the last few games. And in Cincinnati, I agree with Bill. They seem to be ascending. I mean, I think that they're a possible playoff team over there. They've got a good receiving. The quarterback's putting up the good numbers. The second half, I think, is going to be better for them. I have an up arrow for them and a down for the Bills, just because the Bills have just seemed lackluster to me. Their overall efforts, and I don't see him really blowing anybody away. So that's my take.
Dave?
Well, now we're seeing what a healthy Joe Burrow can do for the Cincinnati Bengals. They had a slow start at the beginning of the year. He had the calf injury. People were concerned, well, should he even be playing? Because people, including here, we were talking about, well, hey, could he be risking like an Achilles injury or something? Well, now he's healthy, and they're firing on all cylinders. They kind of took a quick lead on the Bills. The Bills tried to hang in there. It was a touchdown difference in the game. The thing with Buffalo is they're erratic. It can be a really good team, and they can beat a really good team, but then they lose to the Patriots. So I think like Anthony said, I think the arrow is pointing up for Cincinnati right now, and for Buffalo, it's unless Josh Allen all of a sudden becomes a consistent performer, they're in trouble.
Okay. The Browns shut out the Cardinals 27-0. Deshaun Watson in his first game back was 19 of 30. He threw for 2 TDs and had a rather low QBR, 41.7. Running backs Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt combined for 34 carries, 82 yards, and a TD for Hunt. Dave, do you still consider the Browns legitimate contenders?
Well, I mean, if the season were to end right now, all 4 of the AFC North teams would be in the playoffs, believe it or not. And with Cleveland, what they have going for them is that they have a pretty incredible defense. And they only allowed 58 yards last week, total yards, which is incredible. Now, you got to put that into context. I mean, they were playing against no James Conner. He isn't back for the Cardinals. And more importantly, the Cardinals had traded away Josh Dobbs. So I think it might have been a little bit different game if they had a more competitive team that they were up against. What I will be looking at is their next game. That will tell us a little bit more about, are the Browns a contender? Because who do they play? I believe it's Baltimore.
They play the Ravens next week.
Exactly, and that's gonna tell us, hey, is this defense like an all-time defense or not? Because now they're not going against some. And all apologies to Clayton Tune. They're going up against Lamar Jackson and a very, very talented Baltimore team. So I'm actually looking forward to that game. That should tell us a lot about Cleveland.
Yeah. And remarkably, if anybody has a chance, they finish after they play the Steelers. They finish out the season with the Broncos, the Rams, the Jaguars, the Bears, the Texans, the Jets, and then their final game is against the Bengals. So the schedule kind of leans a little bit more toward the Browns than any of our other teams. Cincinnati has a much tougher schedule, I think, close out the season. Let me look at let's see, their last 8 games, I believe, they play the Steelers. Let's see, their last 8 games, they play the Browns, the Chiefs, the Steelers, the Vikings, the Colts, the
Steelers twice.
Jaguars, and the Steelers again. This is after they play the Ravens for the second time.
Right.
So as far as the schedule does favor the Clowns. But Mr. Scott, how impressed were you last week with that 27-0 victory and Deshaun Watson finally coming back?
Well, the card said nothing. I mean, that's just the way it is. And, Deshaun, I was questioning, does he really want to play? I mean, it's like he got his bag, and this shoulder injury was so mysterious. I mean, I was really questioning if he wanted to play. And then the Browns, see, I like their coach. I mean, I really think Stefanski is a very, very good coach. He was here forever. I think he started as an intern with the Vikings and just moved his way up. I wish he had been the coach here. So I like them. And then, like I say, that last game is hard to tell because Arizona really had anything, and Deshaun was just coming back from being out. And so I want to see these next few games with them. I want to see if he's actually going to be – the defense is good. I want to see if he's going to really be a contributor, if he's going to really lead the team, if he's going to really get in gear. So that's what I want to see about Mr. Massage. That's what I'd like to see about him.
Yeah. Bill, what's your comment about Mr. Massage? I was just waiting to. We don't have Don. Don usually brings our after dark music on, but Mr. Scott did tonight. So
don't give a what that's in here, 'cause I'm a rider, getting down, going hard, baby, we don't stop. Don't give a what that's in here, 'cause I'm a rider.
There you go, Mr. Scott. Your favorite 2-minute rap song. 20-second rap song. I'm sorry.
Too long. 20 seconds is too long.
What do you think, Bill? Are these Clowns contenders?
Well, I mean, they're certainly contenders to make a wild card. So prior to the AC joint injury, you saw him starting to round into form. I think in the last game prior to him going down, he passed for 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So you were starting to see him, get things smoothed out, starting to look like he was remembering how to play football again, and then he gets hurt. And then in the first game back, 219 yards. I think it was 18 of 30. Nothing spectacular, but didn't crash the car, didn't drive it into a ditch. So I think as he gets back used to playing football, back used to, the speed at which certain players run routes, the depth at which they run routes, which shoulder they're better, which guys are better for back shoulder throws, which guys are better, at making catches over their, the Willie Mays basket catch or things like that. Some guys can't do. Some guys can only track a ball when they see it coming towards them in the front. Some guys can look up and track a ball over their shoulders. Not everybody can. You have to sort of reacclimate yourself to your players around you as a quarterback when you've been gone for a significant amount of time. But as was already mentioned, it's about this defense. They have easily a top 4 defense, and if that defense continues to play at this level and continues to stay healthy, they now have given you 2 people to worry about, right? Where once you really only had to worry about Myles Garrett. Now that you have multiple people, they now come at you in waves in terms of they've increased the depth of the pass rush. They have increased the talent on the interior of the defensive line. Their linebackers are still kind of, but the secondary and the front are very, very good. The linebackers are, they're there. They're okay. They're not great, but they're not terrible. And then they've got a decent amount of depth of talent on offense. Obviously they're missing Nick Chubb, and that's the main thing they're missing now on offense. They no longer have that hammer closer on offense. So they have to sort of piece it together. Rudy Ford has played well in spurts. And, speaking of fantasy, was a guy that several of us picked up on the waiver wire, got good production out of him, but now he's doubtful. He might play, but he might not play. So that puts it all on Hunt, mostly on Hunt, at least at running back. It means also that it'd be a good time maybe for, we've been hearing about David Njoku emerging in the offense. Maybe now it actually will happen. If each year it's been, this is the year he breaks out. But they still have in Amari Cooper a top 20 wide receiver, maybe even top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. And they get the ball to him like nobody's business. He is the only guy you can count on, at least in fantasy, amongst all of the receivers in Cleveland. But like I said, to me, they'll go as far as their defense takes them. Their offense, is there, to take advantage of certain things, to let the defense get a rest and score occasionally. But they're going to be able to go up against even the most prolific offenses and make them look pedestrian, and that will give them a chance in every single game.
Yeah. To say that they aren't a contender, even though I am very, very prejudiced, as everybody knows, but we are a deep division, and it is possible for any one of these 3 or 4 teams to make a playoff bid. As Dave said, if the season ended today, all 4 of the teams would make it. So, Dave, okay, here I come. The defense again comes up with a big play. The offense did manage to put up points in every quarter, if not a touchdown, at least a field goal. We have at the end of the game, we have Pickens. He eliminates Steelers hashtags and everything to do with the Steelers pouting over Johnson's TD. The sports columnist Graciano says that the Steelers are good at nothing except winning. And Dave, once again, I'm going to address this quarterback decision here. We have Pickett, Trubinsky, and Mason, when I thought they should have held on to Dobbs instead of Trubinsky, instead of bringing in Trubinsky. What's kind of your thoughts? We've seen what happens if Pickett goes down. The quarterback is my main concern. And then every week we talk about our defensive our offensive coordinator. But as I said, this week we put points on the board in every quarter. So, Dave, you can give me my tongue lashing about the quarterback if you want, but give us the lowdown on the Steelers.
All right. Well, a couple of things. First of all, a question: Are the Steelers 5-3 or are they 3-5? Because if you look at their statistics, I think that almost every game they've played, they've been outgained in yards. The other team has had more first downs and has won the time of possession,
which goes to Graciano. The Steelers
somehow they're getting wins. Now, one of the changes that the Steelers made was they brought Canada down out of the box,
right?
Where he's always been. He's spent his career up there. Now with the Steelers, there was Bill Wisenhunt. When he was offensive coordinator, he was up in the box.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bill Arians, when he was offensive coordinator, was on the sideline. And when you talk to different players, or Bruce Arians, I'm sorry.
Ken Wisenhunt and Bruce Arians. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry, but my mind is floating around with all this.
I knew who you meant.
The thing is when you talk to different quarterbacks, they talk about the different advantages and disadvantages of it. Now, one of the things that Kenny Pickett was saying is that he's always had good communication with Matt Canada, but then he had to communicate to the rest of the offense. Now with Canada on the sideline, Canada can convey what he's trying to get across to the whole team. And so maybe that's helping. I think he's going to be there for the rest of the season. Another big change for the Steelers was Cam Hayward was back. Very important for the running game. The defense has been getting gashed, and they were like number 30 or 31 against rushing.
Yeah.
And then you had Derrick Henry, and we basically, aside from one touchdown catch that he had, we pretty much bottled him up. He had 75 yards, and he was not a factor in the game. So what it comes down to with Kenny Pickett is, people have been focusing on his slow starts, and during his weekly press conference, that's the way one of the reporters started. Well, what about Kenny Pickett in these first 3 quarters? And then Mike Tomlin kind of turned the corner on him and said, well, what about his fourth quarter finishes? Because they said, well, in his first 3 quarters, he's only has a 75 cumulative quarterback rating. Well, Tomlin said, well, what's his quarterback rating in the fourth quarter? Oh, well, it's like 108 or whatever it is. And it's like, well, why don't you start with that? With the positive part of it, which is that Kenny Pickett has the intangible, is that he finishes strong. And he's frustrating to watch in some of his passes because he'll have open receivers and he just misses them early in the game. And then later on in the fourth quarter, he's just hitting everything. So it's going to be interesting. The other thing that changed was that Broderick Jones was brought in to start at right tackle. He was drafted to be the left tackle, but apparently Chuks Okorafor said or did something at the end of the Jacksonville game to cause Mike Tomlin to bench him. And Okorafor has basically said, if I had known the consequences, I would not have said or did whatever it was that he did. He's he's accepted responsibility for it. But I think that Broderick Jones played very well. Very well, and they just might keep him at right tackle. So I think that for the Steelers, they're playing the Packers coming up. The way they finish the season, they play the AFC North foes 4 times. Those are probably their 4 toughest games. They play Cincinnati twice, they play Cleveland, and then they finish the season against Baltimore. Now, for the rest of their outside of their division, they have Green Bay, the Colts, the Patriots, the Cardinals, and the Seattle Seahawks. In theory, they should be able to win at least 4 or 5 of those games. But it depends on
3 out of 4.
No, they should be able to win 4 out of 5 of those games.
Yeah, saying that the Seahawks would be the one that they would give them the most.
Right, but really, what the question comes down to is, in those games, we're going to find out, were they really at this point? Were they really a 3-5 team? Or are they a 5-3 team the way their record shows them to be right now? Last thing that I'll say, I think that Mike Tomlin has done a tremendous job with this team. What people forget is it's a very young offense. And like George Pickens, he's 22 years old.
Yep.
And like the captain of the team, Najee Harris was the captain of the team last year. He's like 23. Now Pickett was an older rookie. He's 25. So he and Deontay Johnson are among the older players on that offense. So I think that they can keep these guys together, keep the wide receivers fed, then I think that the arrow is pointing up. If not this year, going into next year.
All right, well, we'll see. So let's get into our Week 10 predictions, sourced by DraftKings Sportsbook. The bye week is for the Chiefs, the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Eagles. So we'll start with Thursday night football here, Mr. Scott. The Panthers getting 3.5 against the Bears, and the over-under is 39.
Boy, I don't like these teams. I think I would just go with an over. I would just take a stab at it. Very light play of the over. I'm picking a winner. 3.5. I just like the over in the game.
What about your 9:30 game here, Mr. Scott? The Colts getting the -1.5 against the Patriots, and the over/under is 43.5.
Boy, that's another one.
I know that's Mr. Scott's rap music.
Yeah, I detest. But anyway, boy, I'd have to go with it under because Pats don't really have an offense, so I'd stick with the under on that one. I can't. Suppose I could flip a coin on it, but I'll stick with the under.
Dave, what was your stats last week on against the over/under?
I was, I think I ended up. Oh no, that's the previous week. No, that's last week. Eight on the over and under 6, 7, and 1. So I improved. I was horrible the week before, but I was 6, 7, and 1 because in one of the games, the Bears Saints, they hit the 41 right on the head.
Yeah.
So and then I was 8 and 6 on the picks.
So who you got, Dave? Starting with tomorrow night's game.
Well, with tomorrow night's game, I think the question is going to be about Fields' thumb, and so I'm going to take the under, and I'm going to take the Panthers. They're 1-7, but then the question is the Bears quarterback. So Panthers in the under.
And where do you go with the Frankfurt game? The Colts getting -1.5, and the over/under is 43.5.
I'm taking the Colts in the under. I think I'm with Anthony on that.
Bill?
So on the first game, which
Panthers,
is the Texans,
Bears.
the Panthers, I don't think are going to beat the Bears. The Bears moribund and in fact worst pass rush in the NFL. I think it finally shows up partially because of their newest acquisition, Montez Sweat, and they get pressure on Bryce Young and force him into some mistakes, maybe a strip sack or an interception or something like that. It's a low-scoring game. I think the over/under on that one is 39 or something. What is it?
Yeah, 39.
39. Okay. So yeah, I'll take the under and I'll take the Bears.
Sunday morning, 9:30 in your time zone. The Colts -1. They're giving the Pats 1.5. The over/under is 43.5.
Yeah, in that game, I will take the under again, as both these offenses are a little challenged, but the Patriots offense is, a bottom 5 offense, and the Colts offense is like number 17 or 18. It's just a little below the middle line. So yeah, and I will take the Colts, and I think the Colts, easily cover the 1.5.
Okay, let's stay with you, Bill. Sunday morning, 10 o'clock, first game, the Texans getting 6.5 at the Bengals, and the over/under is 48.
I'll take the Bengals and I'll take the under. I think the Bengals defense stifles a sort of precariously balanced Houston offense. They were a pretty good running team last year. Damian Pierce was sharing carries, and he and the rest of the group were managing to get a fair amount of yardage, and now he's in a full-on like timeshare with Devin Singletary, and neither of them is the kind of running back that can give you a big play. Neither of them is really great catching the ball. And so that means that you're going to have to drop back and pass, and that plays into the strengths of what the Bengals have on defense. They shift a lot in coverage. They're not a tremendous sacking team, but they do get consistent pressure. Trey Hendrickson is an underrated, sort of a almost, Max Crosby-esque kind of pass rusher, a guy that is surprisingly athletic, has length, surprising strength, and terrific technique. I think he, flushes Coleridge Bernard Stroud the fourth out of the pocket times when he doesn't want to be flushed, and reduces his timing and effectiveness. So yeah, I think that we do get a Bengals win, and I think the Bengals 6.5 though. That's giving me trouble. Will they win it by 6.5? You know what? No guts, no glory. I'll take the Bengals, and I'll take them to cover.
And over under?
Yeah, I already said under. I said under first. That was the first thing I said.
Okay. And the Clowns getting 6 versus the Ratbirds, Bill, and the over-under is 37.5.
I'll take the over. I think people are underestimating both offenses, though the defenses are also really good. But I think that, I think we'll see about 41 points scored in the game, so it's a little low. And yes, I will take the Ravens to cover the 6.
Mr. Scott, Texans 6.5 and against the Bungles, over under 48.
So who's getting the 6.5? The Texans?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take the 6.5.
Okay. Over under?
I'll reluctantly take the over.
Okay. And we have the Clowns against the Ratbirds. Ravens, Clowns. The Clowns are getting the 6, Mr. Scott, and the over-under is 37.5.
Well, my bias against halves. I can't stand in things. I can't stand on this point. But I'm going to take the Browns in those 6 points, and I'll take the over.
Oh, okay. Dave?
Well, the AFC North opponents have not helped the Steelers at all.
No.
So I'm going to take the Bengals in the over, and I'm going to take the Ratbirds in the over.
Okay. Staying with you, Dave, the 49ers are actually getting 3. Jags home field advantage. Over under is 46.5.
Yeah, early in the season, I would have taken the 49ers, no problem. But the Jaguars have looked pretty good. So I'm going to take the Jaguars, but the under.
Okay. And the Packers getting 3 against the Steelers, and the over-under is 38, Dave.
Yeah, the Steelers have, if they lose this game, then that could that's really going to hurt them. And so I'm going to take the Steelers. They know that this is an important game. They have to win their non-division games, and I will take the under.
Well, Dave, I stuck with my Steelers, so the garbage can got a steak last week. Let's see if we can make it 2 weeks in a row.
Yep.
So, Mr. Scott, what do you think here? The 49ers getting 3 points versus the Jaguars, and your favorite over-under 46.5.
Boy. Is Mr. Irrelevant healthy?
He'll be starting. I know
Probably
that.
he's starting the game. He's probably not 100%, but he's good enough to play.
Yeah. And what about the
What about
running
Debo
back?
Samuel?
McCaffrey is healthy. Debo is out again, I believe, but Ayuk is healthy. The only scratch so far is Debo.
Yeah, I'm going to take the 49ers, and I'll sling with the over. I just think this under and over has been low for a lot of these games coming up. I think this could be a breakout kind of a thing.
Well, here's another low one for you, Mr. Scott. The Packers are getting 3 from the Steelers, and the over-under is 38.
Well, okay, the Steelers, Tomlin's rabbit's foot works one more time. And in the horseshoe, I'll take it under.
Oh, under 38. Okay. Bill, 49ers, Jags.
Yeah, I'll take the 49ers there. The 49ers are getting 3, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm not going crazy. Give me the 49ers and give me the under. I will take the Steelers. I think they'll be able to give the 3 and still be fine. And I will take the over, but just so slightly. I think that's like a 40-point game. And then I will take the Saints. Wait,
Right. We're
not there yet. Oh, okay.
We got that. Well, since you're there, you can start it out.
Wait, hold on. Is that game just flat even? Is that what's going on there?
Yes.
Oh, that makes it more challenging for me.
Actually, the Saints are getting 1. I'm sorry.
The Saints are getting 1?
Yes.
Oh, well, that makes it very simple for me. Then I'll definitely take the Saints. It's gonna be a very, very close game. The over under is probably right about right.
Like you said, Dave, we had one of those that hit that 41 right on the head last week.
Well, right. This one probably will as well. I'll take the under, but barely. I think, oh God, I hate this. It's probably 41 is probably right, but I'll just take the under. So I don't think we're allowed to push. If we're allowed to push, I'd push.
Okay, and the Titans getting 1 at the Bucks, and the over/under is 38.
I will take the over, and I will take the Bucks to pull the upset.
Okay, Mr. Scott, the Saints getting 1 +1 against your Vikings. The over/under is 41. No half.
Yeah, I gotta ride with Dobbs again. They're at home. They're inside. The Vikings have a good kicker. I think there'll be some people. I think there'll be more than 41 points. I'm taking the Vikings in the over.
Okay, and the Titans +1 against the Bucks, and the over/under your friendly 38.
Yeah, I mean it's not going to be on my board, but just for purposes of this, I'll take the Bucks and the under.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah, I like Dobbs and the Vikings, and I'll take the over in that game, and the Bucks and the over in that game.
All right, let's see. 105. There's 2 games. First one, the Lions are getting 2.5 against the Chargers, and the over/under is Mr. Scott's favorite, 48.5. Dave.
Well, in honor of Demetrius, I'll take the Lions in the over.
Okay, and the Falcons are getting 1 from the Cardinals, and the over/under is a friendly 42. Dave.
Well, if Dobbs was still in Arizona, I'd be taking the Cardinals, but he's not. So I'm taking the Falcons in the under in that game.
Okay. Mr. Scott. Lions getting 2.5, playing the Chargers, and the over is your friendly 48.5.
Yeah, the Lions. I've seen some troubling signs with the quarterback. It's very, very troubling things I've seen going back to some of his old ways. I'm going to take the Chargers. And the 48.5, I'll take the under.
Okay. Staying with you, Mr. Scott, the Falcons getting 1 from the Cardinals, and the over-under is 42.
Oh, yeah, I'll take the Falcons. The Cardinals are just a shell, rotted out husk of a team. I'll take the under.
Bill?
Yeah, I will take the Lions because the Lions are getting 2.5, and I think there's a better team. I will take the under, though. I will take the Falcons for all the reasons that are already enumerated, and 42 is probably right again. Coin flip. What the heck? I'll take the over for no particular reason, though probably will be wrong.
Okay, and let's see, the other game, Sunday afternoon game, 125. We have, oh yes, this is a good one for Bill. Bill, the Giants are getting 16 against the Cowboys, and check this out. The Lions are getting 16, but the over-under is only 38.5.
Yeah, so one of those things can't happen. So they're really, this is the classic forced choice dilemma. I don't think they're going to cover 16 points. I do believe the Cowboys will win handily, but I don't think they're going to win by 16 points. And then give me the over, and it sounds funny saying it, the Giants. I think the Giants rally and pluckily only lose this thing by 14.
Oh man, I had to look twice when I saw that. Bill, the Commanders getting 6 from the Seahawks, and the over/under is 45.5.
I believe the Seahawks win the game, but not by 6. So I'm taking the Commanders, and I'm taking the over. I think it's a bit of a shootout.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah, that's 16 points. Go ahead.
16 and 38.5. 16 is almost half of what the over/under is. But go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Giants in the over in that game. 60. That's a lot of. I don't know if we've seen that many this season. Wow.
Yeah, we've seen some double digits, but 16, I do believe it's among the highest, if not the highest. So, and the Commanders and the Seahawks, they're Dave.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks, they're 5-3. They got to play San Francisco twice more in the second half of the season. They know they have to bounce back. It's a home game, so I'm going to take the Seahawks and the under in this game.
Okie dokie. Mr. Scott, you were laughing all the way to the bank here. So, the Giants are plus 16 from the Cowboys, and the over/under 38.5. I know you like that half, but
God, it's hard to give up 16 points. I mean, really. But I think the Cowboys are way better. I think the Giants have packed it in. I really do. And I'm going to take the Cowboys.
yeah. I mean, there is no more Daniel Jones.
I'm going to take the Cowboys in the over.
Okay, and what about the Commanders getting 6 at the Seahawks? over under 45.5.
Boy, that Commanders quarterback has been hot.
Yep.
I'm going to take the 6 points and take the Commanders in the under.
Okay. Well, two night games here for you, Mr. Scott, and no half points given here, and very competitive points here. So we'll start Sunday night football. The Jets are getting 1.5 against the Raiders, Mr. Scott, and the over-under is 36.
Okay, who's playing quarterback for the Raiders?
It's Aiden O'Connell from Purdue.
Oh.
Versus Zach Wilson.
From Brigham Young University. Yep.
Oh, boy, this is really Sunday night, huh? I might find something else.
If you want to wash the car, something there, it might be a little cold up there in Minnesota. Trying to wash the car Sunday night, but
I'm going to take the Jets, and I love the lower points. I'm just taking the over, just because.
Okay, well, you kind of laughed at that 16, but here's Russell Wilson and the Broncos getting 7.5 against the Bills, Mr. Scott. They're playing in Buffalo, and the over-under is 47.
Well, Denver showed a little bit of life, and Bills haven't really been squashing anybody. I mean, I'll take that 7.5 with the Broncos. And I'll take the under.
All right. Okay. Bill, Sunday night, Jets getting 1.5 from the Raiders, over under 36.
Yeah. So these are who's that 36? These are two bad offenses, but I think they managed to crack through the 36-point barrier. 37 might be the exact number, but I think that we get at least, I think one of the teams at least hits 20, and the other team just has to get to 17. And then I will take 1.5. I think the Jets can cover 1.5, so I'll still stick with the Jets.
The Jets are getting 1.5.
Right, the Jets. That's what I mean. The Jets. Sorry,
Yeah.
The Jets getting 1.5, and they're playing in New York.
No, they're playing in Vegas.
They're playing in Vegas. Oh, okay. It makes it. I'll still take the Jets, but I don't like it. And then I think that the Broncos will cover. While I think they may, lose the game. I think they may lose by more like 4 points. 47. I'll take the under. Broncos in the under.
Yeah, they might actually win only by 7, but lose by 7. But that hook. Dave, Sunday night, Jets, Raiders.
Well, Anthony Pierce's locker room speech is still ringing in my ears. It's at home. I'll take the Raiders and the over.
Okay, Broncos 7.5 against the Bills. Bills at home, over under 47.
Well, I said before that Buffalo's erratic, which means they go up and they go down. And I'm going to say that this is an up week for them, so I'll take the Bills, but I'm taking the under.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. Well, guys, we've went through all of our predictions, talked about everything that's going on. So let's get some final thoughts in here. Let's start with you, Bill.
Yeah, well, we talked about it, but I'm going to talk about it again. For the Pastronaut, Joshua Dobbs, and people talk about him going into coaching. I mean, no offense, it might be a misuse of his intellectual gifts, This is a person who quite literally could be an astronaut. And, I'm glad that he did decide to give a part of his life to football. He's good at it and he enjoys it. But the world could use him, for many years beyond this. And to see, like I said, what he did, I just hope that we'll tell our children and our grandchildren and maybe even our great-grandchildren about what we saw that day and what he did without having a single practice with the starters. That's still, with all the things I've seen and all the years I've watched sports, it'll be hard for someone to beat that, to literally not know the play calls, like what they call them, to know the concepts, but then to have someone have to describe it, and then you say, "Oh, I know what that is," right? And then to learn as the game's going on what the plays are actually called. It's just wild. It's just so wild. Every once in a while we get reminded of why we fell in love with this game, right? And why there's nothing else quite like it. There's nothing else quite like it. There's nothing because in basketball, everybody's offense and everybody's defense is virtually identical. There's a few little changes, a few little differences, but you could literally, suit up for one NBA team at halftime and switch the other team and be just fine. In baseball, there's no real scheme in the terms of, what you do on offense and defense. Some teams position players slightly differently, but the positioning is about the only real difference on defense. And on offense, there are teams that have slightly more aggressive versus slightly less aggressive philosophies, but there's no real difference in what you're doing other than, like I said, some philosophical and psychological things about how aggressive or to be or not to be. There's nothing, hockey, there's once again, some teams are a little more aggressive about how they move the puck. Some teams like to be more conservative about certain things or, send their defensemen a little further forward or whatever. But still, you're talking about essentially everyone doing everything the same way, pretty much across the board with a few relatively minor exceptions. And then you come to football, right? Which is part of its beauty is, despite the simplicity it has in its heart, the complexity it has in its mind separates it from all our other major sports in this country. And to play the most complex sport at the most complicated position without ever having practiced with the guys you're playing with, it's just, I don't know. I know we sort of understand and discuss how amazing it is, but to try to conceptualize how amazing it is, it's like showing up as the featured soloist in an orchestra that you've never played with. Like, you looked at the sheet music, you have an idea of what's going to happen, but you've never played with these guys, and you're the featured soloist. Grab your violin or your trumpet or whatever it is, and just get in there and let's see what happens. It's amazing. God bless him.
Oh man, Mr. Scott, always good for you to join us, and we appreciate your contributions here. So, what's your final thoughts?
Well, just a couple of things. I had started in last week with Jim Marshall in the Hall of Fame. And I'm just going to say just a couple of things about it. One, 127 career quarterback sacks as a Viking, second most to Moose, Carl Eller. And also most consecutive games played with one team, 270 with the Minnesota Vikings. And my good friend Reggie Berry, who actually played pro football for San Diego. He still lives in San Diego, played a few years and worked for the league. And we were talking about it, and he said, well, there shouldn't be a Hall of Fame if Jim Marshall's not in it. And so when I look at the accomplishments in the career, 270 consecutive games. He had the longest streak. I think Brett Favre, this punter broke it. Jeff, I can't recall, but a punter and a defensive end. Come on. So that's my last word. And I'm working with a couple of people. We're just trying to, I don't know if he's even eligible now. I think he's kind of maybe run the course. I don't know.
Well, no, he's still eligible as one of the seniors committee members. So you should join us on the Not in the Hall of Fame crew, and we talk about things we can do about things. But yeah, we've had some successes. Art Powell is now going to be in the Hall of Fame. Randy Gradishar. In fact, the guy that a man named Mr. Katz, who was part of our Not in the Hall of Fame crew, was the guy who spearheaded the effort to get Randy Gradishar in. So yes, if you're really interested in doing this for real, come hang with people that work on getting people in the Hall of Fame.
So that's a bet. Sounds like it. Yes, I'm definitely interested. I know Jim.
Oh, good. Well, you guys have each other's email information. You can
yeah, I do have. I do have Bill's email.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
If you're not, it's probably listed across the top of the ones that I send out all
right.
Yep.
Right.
Dave, take us home.
Well, not quite sports. You open the show with talking about Veterans Day and in our military. And so, my final thoughts for tonight is that number one is the people that serve, and I'm more interested in the people that serve, not the generals, but the grunts, and those are the people that help preserve our way of life. And one of the things I'd like to point out with the current events, I live right outside of Washington. There's demonstrations, protests all the time. So, this past week, a lot of people in support of the Palestinians in Gaza this week, and peaceful. And next week, there's going to be a very large demonstration in support of Israel. I have friends that are attending both. They're on opposite sides. Completely different. But the thing that I really appreciate, there were countries around the world, including Western Europe, that tried to ban some of the demonstrations, the pro-Palestinian demonstrations. And whether you agree with the message or not, and sometimes even reprehensible messages, our freedom of speech is preserved by our military. And I especially appreciate the enlisted folks that go out there for not a lot of money that help preserve our way of life. So that's my final thought. I just appreciate the fact that these demonstrations and these protests, whether you agree with them or not, the fact that they can take place, I think, is very important. And it's actually more important if you don't agree with them. Because that's the beauty of our country is that people of very different ways of life, very different cultures and religions can come together and live in one country together. So that's my final thought tonight for our troops that help preserve our way of life.
$138 a month plus combat pay.
It's gone up a little since then.
Spent more on bonuses than they did on pay, but anyway, as I said, gentlemen, make sure you go out and support our veterans this weekend. I know, a lot of us have served, and it's an honor, a privilege, but it's also a curse. So you have to take it, what life gives you, and if they give you lemons, like they say, make lemonade. So, gentlemen, good show this week. Appreciate everybody's time, and I'll see everyone next week. For those of you, I did forget the commercial part of the program. If you'd like, you can go to our Cash App there, $JEKing3, to help keep our show on the air. All proceeds go to help keep us on the air. So thank you very much, guys, and I'll see everyone next week.
See you next week, guys.
Take care.
Enjoy
Take
the game
care.
all night, and hey, have a good one.
Yes. Good to see
All
you,
right.
Mr. Scott.
You too. You too. Take care, guys.